time and place. Time and place. And you did it at my diplomatic dinner. Xaden and Violet. Hi, my name is Nichelle. Welcome back to my channel. In this video today we are going to be talking about the second half of Ironflame. Let's kind of do like a quick recap about the first half, mostly kind of where we left things. So at the very end of the first half of Ironflame, all of the girlies, all of the fun girlies, were leaving Basgiath because of the little rebellion situation. Violet had gotten pulled into the basement interrogation rooms by Varish, her mortal enemy, and had been tortured for a couple days. When Xaden came to rescue her, they also decided this would be a great moment to kind of expose the truth of what was happening, and they gave every cadet a choice. They could stay at the school or they could join the rebellion. And a pretty large chunk of the cadets, I think we're told about half, a little less than half of the cadets have decided to join the rebellion. And so now we are set up in Aretia with everyone doing rebellion activities. We actually open this second part with another nightmare from Violet. Violet has been having these nightmares that are kind of like PTSD flashback sort of nightmares about what happened with her in Resson, with Liam, and just the Venin and things. And in this one, she's battling the sage. And Violet says to the sage that like Venin, that was like the teacher of all the other Venins, "You can only hunt me to the wards." And the sage says, "Yet you sleep beyond them, and the longest night has yet to pass." Okay, interesting. Very foreboding. And like, we've seen dreams multiple times now. I'm beginning to think they might be important. I don't know. She wakes up. She's next to Xaden. She's in his room, in his bed, because remember, Ryerson House, where they are, the rebellion is headquartered, is actually like his family home. And Xaden wakes up and sees Violet like looking at him, and he says, "I could get used to waking up like this." And Violet is like, "Don't, because I'm gonna have to go sleep with all the other cadets." I'm sure like they got in last night, so everyone kind of just like crashed where they were, but like at some point they're gonna come up with a plan, and the cadets are gonna have to sleep in like some organized formation. And she's like, "I can't just like sleep in your room all the time. That's not really appropriate." And Xaden says, "This is my place. I make the rules." After that, they do some, morning adult bed aerobics, and they come out, and the house is like literally full of cadets. Also, Ryerson House is massive, apparently. They live at Versailles. They have room for hundreds of people to live here. Slay. We love that. Violet, the gold digger, she's marrying for money. Violet pretty quickly finds Rhiannon in the hallway, and Rhiannon is like, "Oh, you look so much better than last time I saw you," because Brennan has come in and mended her. And pretty quickly after that, they're pulled into a leadership meeting, and everyone starts yelling at Violet because she has really, blown the cover off the secret. Remember how this was like a secret sort of operation? Yeah, not so secret anymore. And one of the women on the assembly, the like leadership team of the rebellion, says to them, "You've exposed everything we've worked for." And Xaden says, "I made the call. You want to yell? Yell at me." Imogen, Garrick, Bodhi, and Violet are all kind of like brought before the leadership board and are being like lectured by these people of how they're like ruining everything and making things so difficult by bringing all these cadets here. And Xaden says, What's done is done. You can stay here and chastise us all day, or you can figure out what to do with the 100 riders we have brought you." And Violet kind of explains what is happening with the journal and why this all kind of came to be is because of this journal, and how she believes that there are instructions about how to ward this place, to use the ward stone that is already on in Aretia to create wards just like they have over most of Navarre. Xaden still has, originally Xaden was supposed to bring that journal to Brennan, but he still has it with him because obviously he couldn't like go give it to Brennan because he had to deal with the Violet kidnapping situation before he could deal with the journal situation. And Brennan is like, "I don't even know how to speak that language," which is so funny to me. The fact that Violet was like, "You take one journal, I'll take one journal. I'll translate it, and then Brennan can translate the other one." And Brennan is like, "What are you talking about? I don't know that language. You literally just made that up." So Violet is the only one who knows that language and can translate it. Even the few scribes that I think were brought with them really don't know Old Lucernish that well, which is the language that it was written in. You think it would be a more popular language if it was like the language of the first 6 riders, so like all the founding documentation would be in that language? You think that would be something they'd like prioritize when they were teaching scribes? But no, they don't. One of the guys named Hawknose is really mad that they brought all of these riders here, and he's worried that because they have this like huge group of riders, that it's going to lead the Navarre soldiers, the Navarre military, straight to them, especially because like they have, I think, about 100 riders, and I literally said 2 lines ago, and they had to like fly through, and like 100 dragon riders are something that you would take note of if you were just like outside and you looked up and you're like, well, it's a lot of dragons and riders. He wants to like interrogate Violet and like ask her some more questions and like make sure her intentions are good, upstanding. Xaden and Brennan are both like, no way, Jose. And he's like, she's a Sorrengail. And Brennan's like, I'm also a Sorrengail. Don't you even forget it. And then Xaden says, I bear responsibility for her. And then he points to a scar on his chest that is a similar like silver line to the 107 he has on his back. And Violet is like, when the heck did you do that? And Xaden says, about 2 seconds after I put you in Brennan's arms after Russian. So those scars, if you don't remember, the way that Xaden like marked his responsibility, the ones on his back, he has 107, one for each of the rebel children that are going to be allowed to enter the Riders Quadrant instead of being executed. And so he has one mark on for each of those children because he bears the responsibility for them. So if they were to betray Navarre, he's responsible for that betrayal. And he has a similar one on his chest now for Violet, where he is essentially swearing responsibility for her if she were to betray Aretia. And Xaden says, you will consider them my guests. I do not ask permission of you, of anyone, to bring guests into my own home. And like everyone kind of like begrudgingly agrees, because like at the end of the day, Xaden is kind of like weirdly has inherited this rebellion. So even though he's like one of the younger members, probably the youngest member of like leadership of the rebellion, because his father led the rebellion before, and because he's taken ownership and like responsibility for the rebel children, he is like pretty important. He's kind of like the prince of the rebellion. Also, they're at his house. They are at his house. So they gotta be nice to him, or he'll kick him out. So everyone has begrudgingly agreed, but they still need to figure out what to do with the 100 cadets that have now shown up at their door. But before they can kind of like sort through that, Violet gets a little ring on her mental telephone, and it's Miss Adarna. Adarna has finally woken up. The crowd goes wild. I'm the crowd going wild that Adarna is awake, but we've got to go see her. So Violet, of course, heads out to the dragon fields. It takes her about an hour to get back out there, and by the time she's out there, Adarna is asleep again, and she's in the middle of this valley that is like full of dragons, and they're like literally stomping around her. Like she's not waking up very easily. And Violet's like, hey Taryn, what's the deal? I thought she was awake. And Taryn was like, she was awake, but he explains that she'll kind of be sleepy and be like in and out and like sleeping significantly more than usual for the next couple weeks as she like fully awakens from dreamless sleep. But she senses Violet and she does wake up. Good morning. Good morning, Darnie. She wants to go hunt and eat some sheep. She's hungry. She's a little hangry, actually. She's a little cranky. And Adarna goes to like wake up, and she stretches her wings out, and Violet sees that one of her wings is kind of like crumpled. It like doesn't fully extend even as she's stretching. And Violet like starts to kind of get like a little anxious and is trying to like figure out like what she needs to do. Like, does she need to get Brennan? Is this like normal? Like, what's going on with this? And Adarna says to Violet, I'm not broken. And Violet says, I never said that you were. And she like already feels bad because she's now hurt little Adarna's feelings. And Adarna says, speech isn't necessary when I can hear your thoughts, but I am no more broken than you are. Okay. Shots fired. And Taryn is like, stop. You're being ridiculous, Adarna. She is allowed to be concerned for your well-being. Now go eat before hunger overpowers your common sense. And he sends her off with Sorrengail to go find some sheep. They go like walking off together because Adarna right now can't fly. Once she's gone, Taryn has Violet put her mental shields up, and he explains kind of the whole situation with Adarna's wings. Essentially, the elders are concerned that her muscles didn't develop properly in dreamless sleep like they were supposed to, and they think it's probably because she delayed dreamless sleep so long. She wanted to go, her body like wanted to go into dreamless sleep after Resin, but they had to fly to Aretia to take care of Violet, and then after Aretia they had to fly back to Basgiath, and then it still took her a couple days to fall into dreamless sleep. So she like delayed dreamless sleep for like I think at least a week or two before she actually like sunk into it, and they're worried that that may have like stunted her development in some way. The elders believe that she will eventually be able to fly, that they'll be able to kind of like strengthen other muscles in her wings to accommodate for those spots where she's gonna be like weaker, but she will never be able to bear a rider, which is so sad. And this like really sticks with Violet, and she like keeps coming back to it, keeps thinking about it over the next few days as they start classes back up with the cadets and the professors that left with them, as well as a few of the people who were already at Aretia who are happy to like take over classes. Violet has been working really hard on this journal translation, and she is left with this like passage and this part that says Iron Rain, and she's trying to like make sense of what Iron Rain would possibly be. She asked Taryn about it. She's like, hey Taryn, do you know what this might mean? And he's like, she feels like she's getting close to like a perfect translation of the passage, but she like still hasn't nailed down quite all of the details. Then we get our first battle brief of the rebellion, and it's held in this like beautiful theater. And there's a giant map that is on the wall kind of behind where the professors will sit. And it looks a little different from the map that they're used to. It like obviously depicts the same land masses, but it just like there's some slight differences where there are areas that are marked with red and orange, where there's like areas and cities that have already been taken over by the Venin. They have those marked on the map. And Violet is just really sitting in a lot of guilt, not only for guilt over like a lot of things. One, for the Adarna situation, for feeling like she was the reason that Adarna was like pushed past what normally would have happened with dreamless sleep. And so the reason that Adarna has this like this part of her wing that isn't properly formed. And she's also a little bit guilty about the way that she's kind of pushed everyone into this conflict. All of the cadets that came with them to Aretia sent home a letter to their family, kind of not explaining what had happened. They tried to keep everything like pretty hush-hush and quiet, but like requesting for them to move away from the borders and also to be on guard because they're a little worried that Navare's military and their leadership are going to attack the families of the students who have decided to leave Basgiath. Professor De Vera starts the class because of course she is here, and she says, welcome to your first battle brief as traitors. And then she tells them to get used to that word traitors because that is what Navare will see them as, because they have chosen to defy Navare's leadership. Brennan is assisting, but no one really knows that Brennan and Violet are brother and sister except her like immediate squad mates. So Rhiannon, Riddick, and Sawyer know that Brennan is her brother, but because he's changed his last name, it's not obvious to everyone else. And they're talking about some leadership that's being made. Essentially, there were new wing leaders put in charge of like first, second, and third wing, and like some shifting around of squads, although they've mostly kept things the same. And they talk about how Flame section of Fourthwing is completely intact, so they get a special patch because everyone from the Flame section of Fourthwing turned traitor. Updates time. The public in Navare doesn't know anything from what they can tell. It doesn't seem like word about what happened got out to like the general public. They've doubled security on the borders of Tirandor, but they don't think their location has been given up. This is crazy to me because like they're literally just like at the former leadership's house. Like I don't think their rebel headquarters have literally moved. You think that you would think that Navare's leadership would think to check the place where the rebels were last time. You think that would be like a first thought, but I don't think it was. I don't think they know where they are. And it really seems like the Tereshi people really are not keen to give up like the location of this, even though some of them must have seen the big flock of dragons fly overhead. Thanks, guys. So far, none of their families have been targeted, although they did receive their letters. There has been no real movement of Navare's troops, but once they finish dealing with the mess Xaden has left, they will be fighting a war on two fronts. Like, Aretia will be fighting a war on two fronts, both the Venin on one side and Navare on the other. Brennan also makes it clear that they have no plans to send the cadets into battle, especially battle against the Venin, because the Venin are so incredibly dangerous that it just like isn't worth risking their lives, because the rebellion is working with this like crazy idea that like maybe we should value human life a little more than Navare did. Then they start talking about like griffins, and he talks about like, yes, some of the griffins are our enemies, but also some of them are our allies, and like they're not like as evil as you've been have been taught. as you have been taught, and like when they come and attack, it is typically in order to like gain these weapons that they need to fight the Venin, and then like it's a matter of necessity, not a matter of them just being like evil. We learned that there was another attack at Samara, motivated by a search for weapons after word got out about the cadets' departure from Basgiath. We also learned that Venin have taken over another town, the town of Anka, which is getting really close to the city where the Viscount Takaris is located, which is making Violet a little bit nervous because she knows that the city where Takaris is located is where that luminary is, which is important. They like really don't want to lose access to that luminary. They like mentally spend some time chatting about it between Violet, Taryn, and Adarna, how they need to get that luminary sooner rather than later, especially if it is under attack. And Adarna asks Taryn, "Can you carry a luminary?" And Taryn says, "That question insults me," as he does. And Adarna says, "Can you carry a luminary while insulted?" And she's the best. We love her. But before they can finish battle brief, Taryn announces to Violet that a riot of dragons is approaching. Brennan sends everyone to the Great Hall. Everyone's like freaking out that they're worried that the Navarre has like finally come for them. But Tien, Mira's dragon, is actually the one leading the riot. And so now Violet is like torn. She doesn't know if she doesn't know what's happening, but she like doesn't want Mira to get hurt. She's hoping she can like talk Mira down if Mira has been like sent to like put the rebellion back in line. So Violet's like sprinting towards the front of the house, trying to make sure no one like murders Mira too quickly so she can like talk with her. Mira lands immediately outside of Ryerson House along with a bunch of other dragons. And Violet is like, "Oh no, we must have been betrayed. They like clearly know exactly where we are." And Taryn lands behind her. Taryn is ready to go. And then Taryn grabs Tien's neck, which is very rude because if Tien dies, so does Mira. And Violet is like, "Whoa, please don't murder my sister, Taryn. Can you calm down?" And Taryn is like, "Please stop freaking out. I haven't even broken through his scales on his neck, okay? No one's murdering anyone in this moment." And Mira is like, "We come in peace. Please stop freaking out. The only reason we knew where you were is because Xaden came and got us." And Sorrengail like confirms. And so Taryn lets go of Tien's neck. Mira apologizes for not believing Violet back in Samara, but she's really impressed with what Violet has managed to do with getting all of these people out of Basgiath. Apparently, General Sorrengail was like forced to tell everyone the truth because a wyvern was left like on the front doorstep of Samara. And then she gave everyone 1 hour to decide what they were going to do. They could either come with her and support Navarre, or they could join the rebellion, which that makes no sense to me. I don't understand why they would be like, "Hey guys, you actually have a choice now. You could join the rebellion or you could stay with us. You have 1 hour to think about it. And if you decide to join the rebellion, we'll just let you fly away." And I'm sure part of it is like General Sorrengail, as we've been told in part 1, is like very concerned with like keeping her children alive, which like fair enough. But like there were a lot of people that weren't Mira, that she was just like, "Bye, have fun in the rebellion, we'll fight you later." And that just like seems like bad strategy to me. Again, don't know a lot about military strategy, but this seems like a bad one. They're still kind of talking about that when Brennan comes out of the house. And Mira looks at Brennan and is like, "You're alive?" And then she punches him square in the face. Mira does indeed break Brennan's nose by punching him in the face. Guards like come over to be like, "Whoa, you can't punch this guy in the face." And Brennan's like, "It's fine, it's a family matter." Brennan like gives orders to send riders off to check on the other Tereshi outposts to see if similar things are happening there. See if that was like Navarre's leadership's instructions were to like give people a choice, and to see if there are other deserters and if they're planning to launch an attack against Aretia. But then he has to turn back to Mira, who is so pissed that her brother has been alive this whole time. And I really, again, I'm just out here validating everyone's feelings. Like sometimes both people can be right even if they're in a fight, you know? Like I understand what Brennan needed to do in order to support the rebellion, and I also understand being really mad that you thought your brother was dead for 6 years, and he wasn't. He was just hiding. That's like something you could be mad about. Do we need to punch him in the nose? I mean, maybe. It doesn't seem like a huge overreaction. Xaden comes over, and Violet and Xaden start like making out, and Mira and Brennan do bond over the fact that that's gross, you know? And nothing truly can bring siblings together like mutual dislike over a significant other. There's nothing like really hating your sister's boyfriend to really bring you together with your other siblings. And also, Xaden and Violet get a room. Like, what are you doing? I do really feel like they maybe need to learn some boundaries about their PDA. Anyway, Violet kills any vibes that were happening of, like, the family reunion because she says, hey, guys, so glad you're all here. I actually need 6 of the most powerful riders that are staying here in Aretia in order to raise the wards. I think I finished the translation. That night, it's time for them to head up to the wardstone to see if Violet is correct. They take the assembly alongside Bodhi and Violet up to the wardstone. Ulysses, who's one of the assembly members, wants to use the, like, gathering to discuss what they should do about Viscount Takaras. And Brennan says he wants us to come to his aid when called. The seaside drifts are to be armed first, and he says he'll let us bring the Luminary back to Aretia. And Xaden is like, he won't. We cannot trust this man. He is not cool. And Brennan is like, no, he, like, literally says we can have the Luminary if he can just see Violet wield. And Xaden is like, no, we'll have to find another Luminary or another way because, like, he will meet Malik before he meets Violet. And Violet mentally to Xaden says, I don't mind going. And Xaden says, okay, you're not though, so don't even worry about it. They arrive at this wardstone, which is this huge black pillar with this pattern of, like, circles and runes carved into it. And Violet isn't sure if it's onyx, like Onyx Storm, the next book, or if it is a, like, polished iron. But they've gathered the 6 most powerful riders and residents, and they need to, like, put blood on it. Then it should set the stone ablaze. And so they all, like, slice their palms and, like, place it on top, and nothing happens. So it's a bummer. Violet's pretty bummed. She, like, growing up was, like, classic overachiever, type A, smartest girl in her class, always doing so well. And even, like, in the writer's quadrant, she, like, was really, the first year was just her beating everyone's expectations of her, like, failing. And this year things have not gone so well for her. She feels like all she's been doing lately is failing. And so Violet, like, kind of decides in that moment that, like, okay, we have to get that Luminary instead. Like, if we can't get the wards up, we need to at least get the Luminary so we can get the forge going, so we can make the alloy weapons, which means that Violet, 1, needs to start training her signet, and 2, she needs to figure out a way to get to Viscount Takaras, whether that includes Xaden or not. And as they're kind of, like, headed back, Brennan comes up to Violet and says, hey, I'm going to be hanging out with you because I know that stubborn face of yours. I've seen you make it before. And I know that means you are up to something. Violet calls up Taryn and she kind of explains her scheme, and Taryn very reluctantly agrees, and then Violet goes to get. Before we can scheme, the next morning, Violet has class. Xaden is gone before she wakes up to go look for more deserters at some of the outposts, and she heads to signet training with Felix, and he has her practicing aim for the first time, because Car, like, literally never did. And he also has her practicing her timing, because right now it takes her a while to, like, build up her strength and zap the lightning, and he wants to, like, get that her to be able to, like, kind of do that a little bit more. She tells Felix about the time that Varish almost killed her as a punishment with her signet, and he's, like, really horrified by this. Honestly, he's just kind of, like, in general mad about the way that she was taught and trained to use her signet before, and the fact that she, like, never learned how to wield from her hands or never learned how to make small strikes of lightning, that Car was only really interested in creating massive strikes of lightning as frequently as possible. And Felix gives her this conduit, which I assume looks like one of those, like, lightning lamps that, like, kids had in their rooms when I was growing up, where you, like, touch it and the lightning, like, zaps from your fingers. I think that's exactly what it looks like. And he says this is, like, directly tied with these runes to your magic, and what it'll do is help siphon some of your magic away so you won't have those explosions of power, because right now you have no control over your magic, and it's actually, like, incredibly dangerous. You could really hurt the people that you're around. And she's, like, kind of uncomfortable with this, and he's like, look, I'm not willing to work with you unless you are willing to work on this, because it is so dangerous. And he's like, right now the lack of control is not your fault, that it is the fault of Car for not training you. He, like, must have been scared of you. Like, clearly the only reason he wouldn't have trained you to, like, aim and to have, like, better control is because he was scared of this power. And Felix is like, which, like, makes a lot of sense. Look what you did. You brought down all of Basgiath. And Violet says, I didn't do that. Xaden did. And Felix says, Xaden hunted riderless wyverns, deposited them on Melgren's front door, and exposed Navari's greatest secret to the border outpost before noon. But you were the one who demanded he give cadets a choice. In that moment, you wielded him, our unyielding, uncompromising, headstrong heir apparent. And he kind of, like, talks about the fact that Violet's of course, powerful within her signet, but she's also really powerful in her relationship to Xaden and the control she has over Xaden, because Xaden, again, is one of the most powerful riders in the rebellion. So them like partnered up, very, very dangerous. Like I said, you need to practice wielding small strikes and just like controlling your magic. And we will meet again next week to kind of like chat about how it went. And Violet is like, we do not have time for this. And Felix says, if we do not have time for this, then I will not work with you. And then Felix says about Takaris, he says, he wants to see you wield, not necessarily see you wield well. Your biggest obstacle there is convincing Xaden to fly with you. Like, this is not something that I'm worried about for Takaris' sake. This is something I'm worried about, like, in the long run, making sure that, one, you don't burn yourself out, and two, that you are actually, like, the most effective weapon as we, like, enter into these battles with the Venin. Next, we see the Sorrengail siblings, Brennan, Mira, and Violet are headed to the Viscount Takaris to get the Luminary. Brennan is coming kind of as the representative from the rebellion, as like the dignitary, to help arrange the arms deal, and Mira is coming as like Violet's sidekick. And Terran is not telling his dragon wife. He's made a promise. He says, on my honor, I will try not to tell my dragon wife that we're up to schemes, but he's not happy about it. He doesn't love keeping things from his dragon wife. Adarna's annoyed that she's not invited, but, like, she would be unhelpful. And Rhiannon knows. Rhiannon's the only one who knows, actually, like, exactly where they're going, and she has instructions to cover up for them if anyone starts to ask questions. They fly through the night to Cordyn, which is where the palace is located, and as soon as they, get close to the city, a group of griffins escort them to this white marble palace that is like in the cliffs. And Brennan says to Violet as a warning, be careful what you say in here. Takaris will hold us to whatever deal we make. He doesn't take kindly to broken words. And keep your shields up, though I'm not sure they'll do much good. Fliers might not wield signets, but most of their lesser magic gifts involve the mind work, and it's the one area where they have the upper hand on us. As they arrive at the palace, they're greeted by, like, a new group of riders, and Brennan greets them in Crovelish, which is, I guess, the language they speak there. The Flyer says to Violet, Mira, and Brennan, give us one truth, and we will let you see the Viscount. And apparently, like, he has the gift of, like, essentially truth-saying, like Nora did, where he can tell if they're lying. And Violet's truth is that she is here to wield lightning, and then, in return, ask for the Viscount for help. Brennan's here to broker a deal for their luminary, and Mira is here quote, to make one wrong move towards my sister and I'll gut you like a fish, and that goes for everyone in the city. How's that for honest? Love. Mira's here to be big sister. And then the trio of Flyers is like, okay, great, you can come on in, and they part. And who's standing right behind them but our best friend, Xaden. Xaden's actually here. Hi! And he says, you aren't where I left you, Violence. And that sentence did make me go, ew, I do not like your tone. Ew. Yuck. It's okay, because the next chapter starts with Violet going, ew, I don't like your tone. She says, where you left me? I whispered under my breath at Xaden as we walk across the guarded lawn, passing by half a dozen more Flyers on our way to a row of open doors made entirely of glass. How utterly impractical and sublimely gorgeous. Like I'm some kind of pet who should stay curled up by your bed because you said so. The thought isn't entirely unpleasant, he fires back. Ugh. Brennan says, I can't believe you think you outrank me. And Xaden says, I do in every way but one. Again, ew, Xaden is acting like the worst version of himself. It's real yucky. And he, like, is walking around, and he seems just, like, incredibly comfortable and familiar with this place. And Violet is like, how many times have you been here? What's going on? And then she calls up Terran on the mental telephone, and she says, hey, Terran, how did Xaden know we were here? And Terran says, I didn't tell Sorrengail, but, like, Sorrengail knows where I am. Like, she has a sense of me. He's like, I didn't explicitly tell my dragon wife, but, like, obviously my dragon wife knew what was up. And then Xaden introduces them to Viscount Takaris. And the Viscount is like, oh my gosh, you brought these guys. They're in terrible outfits. You know the rules, Xaden. We are not wearing that to dinner. And Violet is like, you know the rules? How many times have you been here? What is going on? And Xaden is like, I don't exactly keep track of how many times I've been here. And the Viscount is like, don't even worry. I knew you guys were coming, and so I actually had outfits picked out. I have things pulled aside. Don't even worry. We'll find something super cute, super appropriate for you. My niece, Kat, will help me. And Kat appears. And Violet is like... And Xaden says to Kat, I didn't know you'd be here. But apparently the, like, academy where all the cadets, the Flyer cadets were training, like, burnt down or was, like, attacked or something. So now they're all here. Mira can sense that the vibes are weird between, like, Kat and Xaden and Violet. She's like, something's going on. And they have, like, a sister eyeball conversation moment. Violet kind of tries to convey to Mira that she'll, like, explain later. But, like, I think Mira is picking up on the vibes. And Kat is like, we left your room exactly how you left it. Of course. Xaden invites Violet to get dressed in his room, but Violet is like, I think I need some space. And Xaden warns her mentally. He says, Takaris might want to keep you, but every other Flyer in this palace will happily slit your throat and Mira's in the name of revenge against your mother. Brennan's anonymity. You should really take comfort in the fact that I can't pronounce anything, and it's not just names. Anonymity. I know I've heard this word before. Anonymity and anonymity. Anonymous anonymity. Okay, well, I don't think that was any of those were right. Is all that saves him here. You have no idea how much danger you're in. The lengths I have gone in order to keep you safe. Stop keeping me safe. Violet says out loud, and Kat is like, are you okay? And then she says mentally, you would never have pulled this bullshit last year. You never held me back and never caged me in the name of protecting me. You were the one telling me to find another way in the gauntlet, watching me fight off other cadets at threshing. I wasn't in love with you then. His hand grasps the nape of my neck and his thumb skates over the pulse in my throat. During gauntlet, threshing, I had no idea what you would become to me. The second coming of Dane. The second coming of Dane Atos. Hey! You looked like Xaden, but you sound just like Dane. Apparently, we shouldn't have been so harsh on Dane in the last book, because if you fall in love with Violet, this is what happens to you. It is just like an inevitable conclusion. Anyway, Xaden is like, I'm terrified of losing you. I didn't know what it would be like to lose you, but now I've like sat by your bedside while you almost died, and I don't want you to die. And Violet is like, I need to go out and help save the world, because if I just stayed home and didn't help and was safe, I wouldn't be the girl you fell in love with. And they bicker about their choices and, like, whether she should be safe or whether she should, be free and, like, save people. It's stupid. Then Violet heads to not Xaden's room to get dressed. She gets into a gorgeous little new outfit, Zara. Her new outfit is from Zara. Zara is her lady's maid, not the clothing store, but I did think it was funny that it was named Zara. That her lady's maid was named Zara. I don't know why I called her lady's maid an it. That was kind of rude. I think I was still referring to the store. Zara warns Violet that the Viscount does collect remarkable things, but he isn't into kidnapping. She's like, he'll make you an offer that you can't refuse. Something like so tempting, so like deeply connected to your truest desires that you'll have a hard time denying him. And then Kat comes in and is like, black? You decided to wear black? That's so weird because Xaden loves color. It's one of his least favorite things about Navarre and Basgiath is how much you guys love black. And Violet doesn't love the vibe. Neither does Mira, who threatens to stab Kat. And then Serena comes in and tells Kat to knock it off, to, like, stop bothering these girls. Kat continues to, like, pick at Violet as they walk to dinner. And Violet starts to feel her magic, like, rise up, like her lightning. And Tyrion's like, get it together. Not at dinner. She gets to dinner. Xaden is already there. He's looking cutie. They kiss at the table a bit. And I do think we need to have a conversation about, again, PDA and appropriate boundaries, because they truly don't have any. You are at a diplomatic dinner. We can't be making out at the table. I don't care if his ex-girlfriend is here. Time and place. Time and place. And you did it at my diplomatic dinner. Xaden and Violet. Time and place. Time and place. And you did it at my diplomatic dinner. Xaden and Violet. They're, like, making out so much that Xaden then hides them in his shadows. He, like, puts their shadows around them, which I don't know if that makes things better or worse, I just don't. Can you imagine if you were at, like, a gathering and this couple was, like, making out a little bit and then they, like, threw a blanket over their heads? You would be concerned and leave the room, probably. That's disturbing. I'm worried about them. Mentally, Xaden finally is talking to Violet and he's like, BTW, Kat's, like, magical ability, her, like, special magic is that she can heighten people's emotions. He's like, I would have told you earlier, but you were blocking me all evening. This is patently untrue. They literally were having a mental conversation just a few pages ago. He could have dropped it and been like, hey, I'm feeling a little extra stressed because Cat over there serves as like an emotions amplifier. And he should have. The fact that he didn't mention this is beyond. Xaden at this dinner, not in his best form. He apologizes for being like a little overprotective lately. And then he's like, you should apologize for coming here without talking to me first. And she says, I shan't be doing that, but thank you so much for the suggestion. The Viscount arrives and he immediately takes them outside for Violet to wield her lightning. They're not going to have dinner. They're actually going to wield some lightning. But he's like, you can't be like up here on the palace. Balcony's unique, need to be down in that field because I don't want you to break any of my stuff. Fair. They go out there and there's this like chest, and Xaden conveys to her mentally that this chest was a gift from his father and it is like a priceless Tereshi artifact. Okay, bummer. And it's clearly like supposed to like indicate some relationship and some tensions between Viscount Takaris and the Ryerson family. And the Viscount is like, okay, here's the deal. Xaden, you cannot step on the field at all to help Violet, okay? This is just Vi. And Violet can't leave the field until she strikes the target, which is the chest. Only then can we open the discussion about the luminary. And Xaden is like, no. And Violet is like, perfect, deal. Can Violet aim? No, ma'am. She's like, I'm not sure how I'm going to hit this chest because I can't hit a giant boulder. And this little bitty chest is much smaller. But we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out together. But she does get to bring Mira down with her because Mira's signet is like not even helpful. She gets down to the field and Mira's signet doesn't even work here. So Mira's signet is typically shielding, but it doesn't even work because they're so far from the wards, and Mira's signet relies on like pulling the wards over them to shield. There are a dozen Griffin riders all around them with their like crossbolts pointed down onto the field just to make sure Violet doesn't try to like do anything to Takaris. And she's ready. She's about to pull the lightning down, and then they're like guards standing right by the chest, and she's like, okay guys, can you move so I can strike this with lightning? And as soon as they move, it pops out of the chest a Venin, a creepy spooky little Venin. The Venin pops out of the box. Violet immediately has a bit of like a PTSD flashback to the last Venin she had to fight, and Violet tells the guards to like get Mira off the field, but Mira refuses to leave her sister. She throws a dagger at the Venin, which helps nothing because it wasn't an alloy tipped dagger. And so now the Venin just like has a knife. Taryn is on his way, but he's still a few minutes away. Like he wasn't, I don't know why he wasn't closer by. He like really should have been here. Taryn, sleeping on the job. Maybe he was hanging out with his dragon wife. And can I blame him ever? No. I have a blanket. It's like literally freezing in my house. Okay. Xaden is racing down the steps, but Violet like mentally says to him, don't come out here. We need this luminary. Like I can do this. Like we're already in this pickle, so I might as well get a luminary out of it. But she does convey to him that she would love some alloy daggers. And the Venin says to her, it's you, the one who commands the sky. Oh, how I'll be rewarded when I return with you. And while he's talking about that, Xaden is able to get 2 alloy-tipped daggers down onto the field for Venin. It's absolutely like pouring rain, which should be better for Violet. She can make more lightning when it's stormy. It's absolutely pouring rain. Violet grabs the dagger. She goes and throws the first one, but because it's raining so hard, the rain pushes the dagger down while it's getting thrown. I don't know how dagger throwing works. And she doesn't get him in the neck where she was trying to. She gets him in the side. The Venin throws the whole chest at them, and Violet tackles Mira. They both are able to lie on the ground and get away from the chest. And then suddenly Brennan's joining in. All of the Sorrengail siblings are fighting this Venin. Violet is like, I actually can't do this, and this Venin is going to kill all of us. And Brennan is trying to get Mira to shield, and she's like, I can't do it, this part behind the wards. And Brennan is like, if you do not shield, we will all die. And Violet is telling Xaden she loves him, and Xaden is like, no, you will live. And Taryn is rushing to her side, but it's not going to work. Mira is able to put a shield up over them for just a second, but it completely drains her magic because she had to pull from not the wards. I don't know where she pulled from. Not our business. But then Violet has an idea. She knows how she is going to get out of this. She tells Brennan to get her sister to the steps. And then until Taryn is nearly there, she throws one of the daggers. She throws it at the boot of the Venin. And it stabs through his boot and pins him to the ground. And then as Taryn scoops her up, she uses lightning to strike the ground. And because it's raining so hard, it electrocutes the whole field, and the Venin gets zapped. and he dies. She did it. Yay! Tyrion takes her back to the palace, and he says to tell them, he's like, Violet, tell them I will devour anyone who makes a move against you. My patience has ended. And Violet says, I will be sure to let them know. Meanwhile, Xaden is about ready to murder the Viscount too, because he like put Violet in so much danger. For what reason? And he starts using his shadows to choke out the Viscount. And Kat is like trying to call him off. And Violet is like, hey, I'm all right. I'm okay. This isn't you. She doesn't say this isn't you, but she's trying to like soothe Xaden. So he like drops the Viscount. And she says to him, like, he can't answer questions if he's dead. And Xaden's like, fine, I'll let him go. Once Xaden releases Takarius, Violet says, you're lucky you're not dead. If you'd put Xaden in the same position, in that same kind of danger, I'm not sure I would have been so merciful. They question Takarius about how he captured one of the Venin, and he explains it's like the magic of the chest or whatever. And then Xaden threatens to kill him if he ever even looks at Violet again, and forces him to apologize to her. And Violet's like, it's very fine. He does not need to apologize to me. And Xaden is like, you do not take punishments that are designed for me. And sorry, Tyrion did it better. When he made Varys kneel in front of Violet, he did it better. An hour later, they are dried off. They are back inside in the dining room for negotiations. Takarius' initial offer to Violet is essentially that Violet work for him for a few years, act as security, keep an eye on the wyverns that have started circling the town, and then in a few years, he will retire Xaden, Violet, and whoever else she chooses to an island. They'll have like a lovely, peaceful little retirement. And Violet can feel Kat trying to like shift her emotions as he's like offering this to her. And Violet does snap at Kat and tell her to stop it. They're not friends. Unfortunately, I am a fan of Kat. Okay? And I have been from the beginning. One thing about me is I do love a mean girly. Justice for mean girlies. If the Martha Stewart documentary taught us anything, it's that Martha has fought for her right to be a little bit mean. And Violet says, like, no, she denies this offer from Takarius. One, because she feels like it's a lie. There's, like, no way that she'd be able to, like, peacefully live on these islands. These islands, like, do not allow Navari citizens even to visit, so how's she going to live there? And two, it would be the coward's way out. And Takarius is like, what if I give the Luminary to Tyrandor? Then you would be helping them and also getting your way out. And Brennan is like, well, my sister already earned the Luminary. Are you going back on your end of the deal? And Takar says, I literally would never go back on my word, but I said we would enter discussions. I didn't say I would give it to her. And Brennan is like, okay, what do you want in exchange for the Luminary? Weapons? And Takar says, okay, well, that would be a start. But I would also like you to take the 100 Flyer cadets I've given shelter back to Aretia with you in the Luminary. And Xaden is like, what the heck would we do with 100 Flyer cadets? Which, like, Griffin Flyer cadets. And Takara says, educate them, keep them safe, and teach them to work together, and we might have a chance of surviving this war. And Brennan says, done. Deal. As long as each flyer we take brings a crossbolt with them. Because the crossbolts are something that the Pomorish people have that I don't think they really have in Navarre. And they are, like, a very helpful weapon against the wyverns. Because the Navari people don't have them because they're they're really good weapons against dragons, and obviously they're not trying to fight dragons, but like wyverns and dragons are fairly similar. 4 days later, they are headed out with these cadets. They've already delivered the Luminary to the new forge in Aretia, but they're having to take a height flight kind of combo with the Griffins back to Aretia because they have to go over this very tall mountain range, and Griffins aren't great at flying at altitude. So the dragons are kind of like flying patrol overhead as they walk along this very narrow path over these mountain ranges. It's like very treacherous, and it was like kind of designed to keep Griffins out because it's the border between Navarre and Pomarashi. And Xaden is like, be very careful, Violet. Like, I didn't have a chance to interrogate every flyer about their intentions. Brennan is like, this is kind of like the Flyers' initiation into the cadet life because it's acting as sort of a version of parapet, this narrow path they have to cross with their Griffins. But Flyers don't really see it this way because it's really not that dangerous for like the Flyers themselves. I mean, it's a treacherous path, but like it's wide enough for a person to walk on. But the Griffins are like much broader than people. Obviously, they're like lion sized, and so it is much more dangerous for them. And they're like, would you put your dragons at risk? No, I don't think so. But, like, they really don't have much of a choice. They also have reunited with all of the cadets from back at Aretia at Ryerson House, they brought the cadets there. So they are working in like small teams to hike over this path, and they've like partnered up squads of riders with squads of flyers, and I think even partnered like person with person. It is like also a chance for them to start fostering teamwork between riders and flyers, because that is one of the goals of this education. Violet is like on board with this until she gets assigned to be partnered with Cat's Rift. Later that afternoon, they are still hiking. They are climbing single file up the mountains. Only 2 griffins have fallen so far, but it is like so narrow, so dangerous. Violet's been partnered up with this girl named Marin and her griffin, Daja. The griffins aren't allowed to fly at all, even for short bursts, because when they land, because it's so narrow, they often cause like rock slides, and that could like wipe out everyone. So they are having to walk. And Violet is like talking, and she realizes that everyone knows about her already because she has been this like ransom target, and there was like a huge reward on her head if someone were to capture Violet and bring her back to Takaris. And everyone kind of assumed, I guess back in Flyer Griffinland, that Ryerson would actually grab Violet and bring her back to Takaris as like a gift. They are also chatting about Cat so like Rhiannon is walking with her. She's with her squad, so she's with Rhiannon and Riddick and I believe Sawyer and Sloan. I don't think A.A. Rick is here, unfortunately. They're talking about how Cat and Xaden weren't like great together, and Cat isn't like in general like a little volatile. And again, I just like love a mean girl. I love a volatile mean girl. A boulder rolls down the hill straight for them. Violet tries to channel her magic to explode it because she's like, I have pure energy magic, I should be able to do it. But instead, Terran just smashes it with his tail. And as they're talking, they talk about, oh, do you guys have like an initiation rite? Like we have parapet. Do you have something similar? And they explain that, yeah, they actually like all run and jump off this cliff. And if they land on a griffin, like then that will be their griffin. And if they don't, then they don't get a griffin. And they're like, oh man, you just die if you don't land on a griffin, right? And they're like, no, that's crazy. What do you mean? We jump this, it's like cliff jumping. There's a river underneath. We just like swim back to shore. And we're like, man, we didn't get a griffin. And we go along our merry way. Do you guys die if you fall off the parapet? And they're like, yeah. They're like, you could put a net or something, you know? And they're like, yeah, I guess so. The magic is like shifting around them, and Terran explains it's because a dragon has hatched recently, so this area has turned into like a hatchling ground, which like shifts the magic, and it will act as like everyone in a 4-hour radius of them, like a 4-hour flight, will be able to sense this change. Anyone, whether it's like a griffin or a dragon or a wyvern. A few hours later, they are getting really high up there, and they are hiking through clouds. They're getting pretty close to the top. There's probably about an hour left, but a lot of the flyers and the griffins are starting to get altitude sickness because they are not used to hiking at this high of an altitude, and people are starting to get real woozy. Violet is surprised when she sees Dane up ahead, and because he was like way at the front of Fourthwing. He's there to warn them because there is a pressure trigger on the next section, so they can't walk on it. They have to jump over about this like 5 or 6 foot stretch of the path. They have to jump over it or risk setting off this like pressure trigger. And it should be fine. Like it's not huge. Even Violet, who's pretty small, should be able to jump over it. But Violet is really worried about the girl named Luella that is traveling with them. She has been feeling pretty sick due to the altitude, and Violet is worried she won't make the jump, but they really don't have another choice. So Violet, using her brains, we could do this kind of like I did for Gauntlet, where if we like shove a sword in here, we can kind of use it as an in-between. We can like jump to the sword, and then you could swing yourself across the rest of the way. And she explains this, and then Riddick goes ahead and like climbs out and shoves Dane's sword into the cliff. And Violet goes first. She's able to leap across. She lands, hurts her knees, because like landing that hard on the rock is tough on your knees, but she does it. Luella is about to go next, but she doesn't get far enough. She's like slipping as she's swinging, and she lands on like before the end of the trigger point. She sets off the trigger point, and she kind of like lurches forward, trying to get away from it, and she knocks into Violet, who knocks into one of the griffins, who kind of like, they all start to like slip off the hill. What winds up happening is Violet's able to pull herself up onto the hill, but Luella and Visa, both flyer girls, are holding her hand. She has one hand for each of these girls, but she's like not strong enough to pull up either of them. One of the griffin comes and grabs Visa and is able to rescue Visa, but Luella's griffin I don't remember why, and she is just clinging on. Violet turns around looking for Riddick for help, hoping that someone will be able to help her pull this girl up. But Riddick is busy because he has 2 arrows shot into him. So remember how that was like a trigger trap? Well, the arrows went off and did shoot Riddick in the chest, or in the side. And so Violet calls for her brother, Brennan, because Brennan will be able to mend her. Meanwhile, Violet is still holding on to Luella, but she is slipping, and she slips through Violet's fingers and just disappears into the clouds. Violet is like stuck there because her shoulder is like dislocated, and she is kind of like running high on adrenaline, but she knows she's going to be in tremendous pain any second now. Dane helps her up, gets her to her feet. Meanwhile, Kat is yelling at her for letting this flyer drop, and Dane is like, stop yelling at her. Like, she did the best she could. If you take one more step towards Violet, I will push you off this cliff. I don't care who your uncle is. And Sloane says, I will push you off this cliff just for fun, which is maybe the first nice thing Sloane has ever done for Violet. I mean, she doesn't actually push Kat off the cliff, which is great because I love and appreciate Kat. Meanwhile, Luella's griffin starts dying, and we're told that griffins die with their flyers. Like, their lives are inextricably linked together. So since Luella has fallen to her death, her griffin will die shortly after. Dane pops Violet's shoulder back in, just as they did when they were kids, and Brennan arrives to tend to Riddick. As they're kind of like dealing with all of this, wyverns arrive through the clouds. The dragons can't see them because of the thick cloud cover, but somehow the wyverns can like sense them. Violet starts like ushering as many people as she can like up the trail, because if they get a little bit higher, they'll be above the clouds, but they're in the clouds, and so are the groups behind them. So they know they need to like deal with this wyvern situation. They're not going to be able to get everyone up and out of the clouds where the dragons can help them. The dragons are she's like talking mentally with the dragons, and they're trying to communicate that they need someone who has like weather wielding abilities to blow these clouds away and to maybe raise the temperatures to like disappear some of the clouds. Taryn is able to kind of like navigate through the clouds to get to Violet. Violet hops on Taryn's back, and Dane starts being like, what the heck are you doing? You're like seriously injured. You just dislocated your shoulder. Would Ryerson let you rush off into battle against God knows how many wyverns, or worse, the Venin who created them, when you're wounded? And Violet says yes, and that's why I love him. And then she flies off. Taryn can't sense the wyverns at all. He has no sense of where they are, but they're able to break above the clouds where like the mountain's peaks are. And Violet is like, are there any dragons down there? And Taryn is like, no, there are no dragons down in the clouds. There are all the dragons are up on the mountain peaks, keeping watch over the riders that are up there. And she's like, okay, I need you to have the wind wielders pull the clouds away from the path. And they do that, and then Taryn starts to like fly down over that, trying to pull the wyverns kind of as far away from everyone as possible. And then Violet lets Taryn's magic fill her up, and then she forces it downwards through the clouds below them, and it like lights up the 4 wyverns, and it kills them, it electrocutes them. And they fly down to like just confirm the wyverns are dead, and there were no Venin riders, which there weren't. Yay. Violet rejoins everyone else. Brennan offers to mend her shoulder, and then she kind of explains how that works, because her magic is like kind of like an energy field thing, and the wyverns are composed of like this dark magic. She knew her lightning would be attracted to the wyverns, and she was able to use that to zap them. And then Brennan explains that they've kind of learned through their research that wyverns and the Venin have like a shared consciousness between all of them. So they are going to kind of like report back. And the fact that Violet was able to zap those 4 wyverns using her lightning powers is something they will already know. And like now they will be after her for sure. Okay, that's where we'll pause for today. The next chapter opens with a quote, which I'm going to read you. They all open with quotes. This one I'm reading to you. It was only in the last 50 years that we realized that they were no longer solely coming from the barons. They'd begun to take recruits, teaching those who had never bonded a griffin to channel what was not theirs to take, to upset the balance of magic by stealing it from that very source. The problem with mankind is that we too often find our souls to be a fair price for power. Captain Lara Dorell's Guide to Vanquishing the Venin, property of Cliffsbane Academy, which is the school for the griffins, in the same way that Basgiath is the like Dragon Rider Academy. Okay, we are picking things up 2 weeks later as we gather in the morning for them to read out the death rolls, which is now not just the death rolls for like the students, but the death rolls for essentially like the entire rebellion headquartered at Aretia. And they're reading out the names of several like writers, like graduated writers, who were working to fortify villages and divert Venin attention away from the valley, because right now the valley where Aretia is located is also home to the dragon grounds, which right now are hatchling grounds because several dragons have hatched, 4 to be exact, over the past few weeks. And Violet is like telling us that our siblings and friends are dead in this way is actually like kind of cruel, kind of like not nice. Like it's even worse than the attacks or than the death rolls were at Basgiath, because Basgiath you were like hearing about people you like went to school with, like in some ways your coworkers, although sometimes you were hearing about people you were closer with. They say it was better. I don't know if it really was. And here like a lot of them have their like friends and siblings and family that are in the rebellion, and so sometimes this is like the first time they hear of their like siblings' deaths. Anyway, when the Fliers' names are announced, they like kind of like weep and mourn, and like it feels very, very dramatic and very emotional in a way that the dragon riders were taught to never express their emotions in that way. And Violet is looking at them and she's thinking about how human and natural that feels, and how kind of upset she got when she was not in kind of this structured environment over Liam's death, and how that felt much better than the ways she had been kind of taught to endure grief with this like solemn stoicism. Kat really strongly blames Violet for Luella's death and is just like being incredibly hostile. Like she didn't like Violet before because Violet is dating her ex-boyfriend, and so they're like not on the best of terms to begin with, but Luella's death really shaped the way that Kat viewed Violet, and not for the better. And like honestly, Kat is just like stirring up drama. Okay, Kat is being not the best behaved little citizen of this new rebellion. She on Saturday apparently posted a list of all of the Fliers that Mira had killed over her time as a writer, because she's like notorious for doing it. And that's kind of rude, okay? Like Mira did the best she could with the information she was given. Also, there was an incident with Kat a few days ago in which Kat knocked on Xaden's door, which is now the room that Xaden and Violet typically share. And she knocked on Xaden's door like in a very sheer robe, and then was like pretty disappointed when Violet answered the door. Violet technically is supposed to be rooming with Rhiannon, but like she definitely isn't. She's rooming with Xaden, and Rhiannon is like using their room to hang out with her girlfriend. Okay. Can you blame her? No. And Rhiannon says to Violet, I am starting to think we'd be better off having Jack Barlow up here instead of Kat. Which is like a bold statement. What are these hairs doing? Later that day, all the riders and Fliers are summoned up to the flight field with the dragons and their griffins. And Adarna is like, I've never even tasted griffin before. Kat is like giving her the stink eye, and so Darna's like, I've never even tasted griffin before. And Taryn is like, we do not eat our allies, you're gonna have to find yourself another snack. He also calls Adarna the hungry one because she is always needing a snack. Adarna has gotten even bigger, and Riddick says, like, comments on the fact that she's grown, and he's like talking to Violet about it, and then he says, the mini Taryn is becoming ferocious, isn't she? Because like, of course, now Violet has like 2 black dragons, and Adarna snaps at him. She like grabs she shows her teeth, and she does threaten to like bite him, and she says to Violet in her head, I am no one's miniature. And Violet has to like step between them and be like, Adarna, calm down. He was just like commenting on you, okay? The fact that you were like growing, could you like be a little less sensitive? But like, she's a cranky girl. She's a cranky girl. And Violet says, no more spending time with Scale. I mean it. She is rubbing off on you. And Adarna says, if only I could be so lucky. Oh. And Taryn is like clearly exasperated by all of his girlies. His wife, Violet, Adarna. He's just like surrounded by, you know, fierce young women. I don't know how old Scale is. We're calling her a young woman because it would be rude to call her an old woman. Professor Trissa explains that they have selected their squad and this drift of Griffin Riders as a test run of this new class that they're wanting to teach, because both of these squads in this drift are like top of their class. And she is asking a little bit more about the magic of the Fliers, and Kat explains that they're still learning to channel in this new place, that the magic like from the ground like feels different channeling through their griffins, and they're only at about half power currently because of the like griffins and them adjusting to this new environment. And then Trissa like just like starts to really talk about the magic and how it works, and she starts talking about these mage lights. So apparently they have the magic lights that light the house, and they are powered by excess power that comes off of the riders like body heat. Like they don't notice it's leaving, but they're all like kind of like exuding this excess magic. And she explains that those lights are created by tying magic to an object instead of to a wielder. And she goes on to explain, runes aren't just decorative. They're strands of magic pulled from our power, wielded into geometric patterns for specific uses, and then placed into an object, either for immediate work or uses at a later date. We call the process tempering. And she explains that it's like different from the alloy. So the alloy that is in the weapons and in the wards is like a magic storage device, but it is just like storing like raw power, more like a battery, where these runes indicate specific usages. They are like not as open-ended as the alloys and like are used like to hone specific tasks, but they can be used like much more broadly. She goes on to explain that in order to make the runes, you have to separate a strand of your magic. You like pull a strand out, and she like does it like physically, and everyone is like, what the heck are you doing? Are you just pretending? And she's like, no, this is really how you do it. And then you like shape it. You like tie it in a little rune knot in a similar way that like of how you like shape your magic when you're creating a shield. And then you create the rune you want, and then you temper it by pushing that rune into like metal or glass or wood, I think are the materials you can push it into, but it seems like you can kind of push it into anything, and you push that into there, and then the rune holds the magic inside of it. I'm going to be a little bit honest with you guys. We start to really get into like the nitty gritty of how the magic works in this world in the next few chapters of this book, and I don't really understand. Like, I'm just here for a fun time. You know, I understand that I'm the one who's supposed to be explaining this to you, but like, I don't know if I truly get it. But essentially they're just like putting runes on stuff, and runes can be magical. I feel like that's all I need to know, right? Maybe, we'll see. And Professor Trissa goes on to explain that this was like a like skill that was well known and mastered in Tyrrendor before the unification, but after the unification it was outlawed because it was only a skill that Tyrrendor had, and they wanted to make sure power was centralized, obviously, as the people in power tend to want to do. And so she kind of like sets all of the cadets and all of both the Fliers and the Riders off to practice their first rune, which is an unlocking rune. Sawyer explodes himself in his first attempt. He like puts too much magic in and like backfires and like doesn't go into the rune, but like just like explodes around him. And Kat is the first one who is able to do it successfully. She actually like masters the runes like pretty quickly. The Rebel kids also have an advantage because they already know how to do kind of like basic runes. It's also why Xaden gave Violet those Tereshi notebooks. Remember when she had those arts and crafts books and she said, why do I have these? And Xaden said, I just thought it would be kind of nice for you to do. And like, that's not true. It literally was for these runes. Remember how Xaden is like, I literally never lie to you. I would never lie to you, Violet. Sometimes I just don't give you all the information because you don't know how to ask the right questions. No, like he literally did lie to her. This is an instance in which he lied to her. He didn't give her those books so she had an activity. And I assume he would cover it by being like, well, that was part of it. Like, I thought that would be kind of fun as like no, he didn't care. Anyway, liar, pants on fire. Later, Violet is back in her room with Xaden practicing, and she's getting better at separating those individual strands of her magic. And she starts talking to Xaden and realizing that he's put runes into the various things he's given her. Like that dagger with the alloy in it had an unlocking rune embedded in it. That's why she was able to unlock that door when they were down in interrogation. Xaden explains that he also has this stone on his bedside that has a rune on it, and he explains that it's like not, it like was a protection stone. He's used up the protection, and he explains what happened. I reread this section multiple times trying to like understand what happened, and I still don't think I understand it. Okay, I'm still so confused. I assume this is one of those things that like I get the gist, and maybe like the details will be explained to me later. Okay, so all of the rebellion children got this stone. There was a protection stone. Okay, it had a rune on it that would be activated when their parent was executed only by dragonfire. Okay. And so every single rebel kid had this in their hands when their parents got executed. And it's how they got their rebel relics. They're actually like protection relics that were imbued in them by the protection stone. I don't understand what the stone did, though. How did it protect them? I don't think the kids were ever under the dragonfire. Like, I don't think it was imbued on them as the kids were burnt alive. I think it was when the parents died, it like transferred onto the children, but like they're protected how and why. Again, maybe we'll learn more later, but at this moment in time, I am a little confused. And he is also, like, Violet asks him, like, follow-up questions. And Xaden says, I like when you ask me questions. Anything else you want to know? Apparently, Xaden is, like, planning to film a Q&A video later for his YouTube channel. And so he's just really trying to, like, source some questions from Violet. Like, Xaden, what do you want to tell her? Stop making her play Q&A dance battles. Okay? Like, I, like, hate it. It drives me cuckoo bananas. Sorry, I feel like I'm bringing some negative energy here to Ironflame. And I will say I liked Fourthwing better than Ironflame. I will say that. Okay. But I have great hope for Onyx Storm. I'm very excited to read the next book. But sometimes I'm like, what are we doing, guys? The next day, they're down at Battle Brief, and Devera is like, hey, guys, so we've given you 2 weeks to try to, like, make friends between the Drifts and the squads from the Fliers and the Riders, and, like, you haven't done it. You haven't done it. So we've decided, like, the Dragon Codex applies to all of you, and so we're going to bring back challenges. So Devera kind of goes on to explain, and I think Emerito, the, like, sparring teacher, also comes out and explains that essentially they will, like, reinstate challenges where Riders or Fliers, either one, can challenge people to spar if they want. And these are the rules. There's no more murdering. Oh my gosh, we love the addition. You can, you, like, spar until either someone yields or someone is unconscious, but, like, murdering is expressly forbidden. Everyone can only challenge one other cadet and can only be challenged once. So essentially you're only going to be able to participate, I think the idea is, in one challenge. Either you are maybe two. Maybe you can challenge once and be challenged once. But if, like, someone challenges your mortal enemy, I guess you're gonna have to pick your runner-up mortal enemy, you know? The same girl, you can't get challenged by everyone. Also, you can't challenge your squad mates. So if you have beef with someone in your squad, too bad, so sad. And this is going to be especially important because starting tomorrow, they're going to integrate the squads and the drifts cohesive units. So if you have a problem with, you know, a Griffin Rider or a Dragon Rider, vice versa, today might be your only chance because tomorrow you might be on the same team. And Professor Devera is like, hey, and when we bring you guys together, you're going to unify. Like, it's not going to be like you're working together. Like, you shall be one. Okay? Okay. And Professor Kindara says, and if you do not, we will fail. When it is time for combat, we will die. They're like, it is really important that you guys learn how to, like, really cohesively work together. Then challenges begin. Rhea is challenged by Traeger, which we've heard about Traeger a few times. I don't think I've told you about Traeger, but he is a Griffin boy. He's kind of cranky. Several people from Cat's Drift start to challenge. See, there's Drift and there's Rift. I don't know which one it is. Several people from Cat's group start to challenge a lot of the people close to Violet, so like Imogen and Sloane and things like that. And then Cat challenges Violet, obviously, because she has it out for Violet. And obviously, because they didn't have warning about the challenges, Violet wasn't able to do her usual tactic of poisoning. Normally, she would have slipped a little something in Cat's breakfast, so she would have been weaker, but she's at, like, full strength. Adarna, we love Adarna, she's like, hey, girly, what if you just scratched Cat's eyes out? So eyeballs are, like, the softest tissue on the human body, so if you just went straight for the eyes, I think it could work really well. And Taryn is like, stop, Adarna, go for her kneecaps, obviously, Violet. You got this. And Cat is like, this is for Luella. And immediately, and they start fighting. And the moment they begin fighting, it becomes clear that they were, like, both trained by Xaden. Like, Cat fights in the same way that Violet does, which is the same way that Xaden fights. Like, they both clearly were trained on hand-to-hand combat by Xaden. This is happening. They, like, are battling, but also chatting away as they challenge. And Cat says to Violet, does it bother you, knowing he taught me first, that I had him first? I'm going to leave out quite a bit of the conversation that happens between Cat and Violet during these sparring battles because I have to be able to say it out loud, you know? And sometimes some of it gets a little R-rated. And I shan't be repeating it. Sorry. Kat continues to like poke in the same vein about how like she had Xaden first, she was with Xaden first, all of that. And Violet starts to like picture Kat and Xaden together, and she starts to get like jealous, and she starts to get like angry. Kat punches Violet square in the face, and then Violet starts to like feel her lightning rising up, and she's trying to keep her magic in check. Kat is able to pin Violet to the mat, and then she tells Violet that she's just a placeholder to entertain him, and that like he really has no like substantial interest in her. It's just something like convenient. Then Violet gets really mad, and she punches her in the ribs right where she would normally stab someone. She like gets her really good, and then Kat like rolls off her, and then Violet punches her square in the face, and Violet is like, what is wrong with you? It is not my fault that he doesn't love you. And Kat says, of course he doesn't. He's not capable of loving anyone. You think I am so petty I attacked another woman over love? I'm not fighting you over a man's affections. I am going to war with you over a crown. That was the reason we were engaged. It was promised to me, and I'm not giving it to some damned Sorrengail who chose to drop the flyer instead of her squad mate. Your entire family deserves to die for what you put us through. Violet has the upper hand at this point. She's like above Kat, has her hands around Kat's throat. She's raging. She's ready to murder. And then Xaden comes over the mental telephone and is like, hey girlie, I honestly don't care if you kill my ex-girlfriend Kat. She is so annoying. But you will be upset about it later if you do. So maybe don't kill her. And then Xaden like comes in and is like, hey girlie, you very clearly, Kat has been messing with your emotions. Kat has been messing with your emotions. She's been heightening them. And Violet is like, I don't want to kill her. And she thinks to herself that she loves Xaden more than she hates Kat, which is good. This girl you just met. And also she has some points, okay? Like, is she a little bit petty? Is she a little bit mean? Is she a little bit annoying? 100%. But, like, also she has some points. But she literally cannot get her hands off of Kat's throat. She can't do it. She can't do it. Xaden winds up stepping onto the mat and, like, lifting Violet physically off of Kat. And people immediately start yelling at Xaden, like, what the heck is he doing? And Kat is mad because she didn't tap out. Like, this battle isn't over. And the people on the edges are like, what the heck did you do, Xaden? And then it's like explained that Kat was using her magic, so it was unfair as a challenge, and like so Xaden had to step in, and it was like, fine, everyone is squared away. But Kat is still like, or Violet is still like actively lunging for Kat as Xaden like pulls her away because she's filled with rage, and she does let off a little bit of lightning. The room is a little on fire, a little burning. Okay, it happened, not a big deal. Kat is escorted back to her rooms, and like the feelings ease as like distance separates Kat and Violet, because distance does affect Kat's powers. And Xaden carries Violet to the assembly chamber, where 4 people are already gathered and doing actual work. They are working in the assembly chambers, okay, where the rebellion is headquartered and where they work. And Xaden kicks them all out. Okay, I understand this is your house, but like, this is also a government office. Seems kind of rude that you're kicking people out who are working. Could you go back to your bedroom? They can't. Okay. He's tending to Violet's injuries, and then he explains that he heard everything that happened. And they kind of like talk through everything that happened with Kat, and Xaden starts taking Violet's clothes off, and she's like, maybe not in here. Maybe not in here. And Xaden is like, yes, in here. This is my house. I can do whatever I want. And she does indeed end up completely naked. Actually, she might just be pantsless. I think she might just be pantsless, okay? On Tyrandor's throne. And Xaden shares his thoughts with Violet as they're getting busy. He finishes up his activity, and then Violet is like, oh, do you want to switch? And Xaden says, no, I don't need you to reciprocate. I want you to know that you are more than what Kat said. You were like not just something to entertain me, like you're important to me. Which is why I have you pantsless on this throne. And then he helps her put her boots back on. Hey, just want to check in. I did almost murder your ex-girlfriend. Would that have been an unforgivable act for you? Just taking the temperature of things. And Xaden says, nothing you could do would ever be unforgivable to me. And then Xaden goes on to explain. He's like, I know Kat said we were engaged, but we were not engaged. We were betrothed. It was like it was part of a political alliance. It was like very different. And then we like dated for like 9 months, but like it didn't work. We like weren't really very compatible. And then they talk about their feelings, and they talk about how like Xaden is essentially like the prince of Tyrandor, like he's a duke of Aretia, and he talks about how he like we need to like be able to talk about our feelings in a real way because I want a real relationship where we have real discussions, and like I refuse to lose you again because we're not communicating well, so like we need to like sit down and talk through things when they come up like they did today. And Violet is still just like feeling a little like rattled. She's felt like fairly out of control of her own emotions over the past few months, both especially when it comes to Xaden. This like stuff with Cat that keeps coming up, and also the way her emotions are like tainted by Terrence and how Terrence's emotions can overwhelm her. It just kind of feels like she's like a little bit emotionally a mess. And Xaden is like, you need to find your center. And then he's like, also, you need to start carrying your daggers, because in the daggers, not only is there an unlocking rune, but there's a rune that protects you from Cat's magic, because like I suspected one day she would come and cause problems. Okay. The next day, it is time for Squads and Rifts to unify, and Violet's squad and Cat's Rift are like put together because they're both the strongest. And Violet gives them patches that signifies their part in the squad, and Cat is like, what are we supposed to do with these? These are stupid. And Violet kind of like explains how the patches work and how they're like cute like Girl Scouts, but like some of them are like secrets. You have like secret cool patches and people don't even know what badge that is. Violet is just like trying to be welcoming and friendly. It is not working. Cat is still being hostile. Rhea is like, maybe we should feed Cat to Sorrengail. I think that's fun. I know I said I liked Cat, and I do, but she's like kind of being annoying. Then Violet does explain Cat's gift to them. She's like, hey, by the way, Cat can like amplify emotion. So like if you're feeling like particularly like crisis sometimes, it's maybe Cat's fault. Adarna is still wanting to eat Cat, but again, Taryn is like, we are not going to eat our allies. Then they head to the library. Takaris sent books for Violet to help her find her center, because apparently, that was a conversation she was having with Xaden, but apparently this is something she needs to do in general. So she's looking through some of those books, as well as, again, working on translating the entirety of Warwick's journal. But the books are in Cravolish, and the journal is in Old Lutheran. But luckily, Dane is also very, very good at languages, and she calls him and asks if he will help her go through the books and the journals. And so he's like sitting with Violet, and this is like the first time they've really had a conversation in months since Liam's death, and he's trying to explain himself and how just like traumatized he was after his first year, and seeing all of that death again and again really was traumatic for him and changed the way that who he was as a person, and how that's why he acted like so overprotective and overbearing with her, is because he just like couldn't stand the thought of like losing another one of his friends. He is like, I don't think I could have survived it if I had lost you. And Violet says, part of me wonders if that's why they push us so hard. They transform us into these perfect weapons, teach us to critically think about everything except the codex and the orders they give. And he goes on to explain kind of what was happening with her memories, and he explains that like the first time he took her memories, went into her memories, it was like a complete accident. He was so accustomed to like very casually touching her because they were like friends growing up who would like, touch occasionally. And back when he didn't have a signet, and he like didn't really think about the fact that his signet obviously would change the physicality of their relationship. And it wasn't until the second time that he was doing it on his father's orders to like get information, but he didn't realize that his father was out for vengeance. He like really did think that his father was like worried about like security for Xaden. And Violet is like, I totally get that, but I'm not sure I know how to move past it, because like Liam is dead because of the information that you stole from my memories. Like we can't undo that. I understand that your rationale wasn't malicious, but like the effects were pretty traumatic and devastating. So don't know how we move forward from there. Dane is like working on research on like imbuing stone in the similar way that they will for the stones, and he continues to help her with this research even as they like still are kind of trying to figure out how to make their friendship work in this like new world. And as this chapter comes to a close, Dane asks Violet if she is in love with Xaden, and she's like, yeah, I am in love with him. And then he says, then I will trust him as much as you do. Okay. Dane like really trying to claw his way back from that hole he dug himself in the first book. Will he ever be out? I don't know, but he's climbing. A few days later, Violet is out training her signet with Felix, so she is still working on those smaller, more controlled strikes and her aim. And Felix explains the energy because he's trying to get her to strike the conduit. He's like holding the conduit and he's like, strike this, and she's like, if I strike that, I'll kill you. And he's like, yeah, I don't think you can do it. And then he's talking about how it worked with the wyverns and how she knew she needed to like strike into the clouds and how it would kill all the wyverns. And he says, the energy field is quite similar to the magic in that way, and you are the greatest energy field of all. Summon your power, but instead of letting the conduit have all of it, cut it off yourself. I don't know what that means. Okay, again, when they start talking about like the specifics of how Violet's magic works, I go, she make lightning go pew pew. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it's not for me to figure out how the magic works in this world. I'll figure it out when it's important. I don't need to predict how they're going to be able to use it in the future. And Felix and Violet is talking about how she like likes watching her magic go into the conduit, and it's like fun to have those like little lightning. Again, I think it does look like one of those lightning lamps, which are fun. And Felix says, you're supposed to love it. It's better to find joy in your power than it is to fear it. And Violet thinks to herself, as she doesn't say this out loud, but she's thinking to herself that it's not her magic she's afraid of. She's never been afraid of her magic. She is afraid of herself and her inability to control it, like her emotional volatility and those sorts of things. And then Taryn steps in her head and says, you shouldn't be afraid. I chose you, and dragons make no mistakes. As she's headed back in, she hears word that the city of Pavis has fallen. Xaden was there, but he's like completely uninjured. But Mira has broken her leg. She's like back and is getting mended, but like her leg was broken. They have skipped over the city of Cordyn, which is where that palace is, where Takarius is, but they're clearly moving straight for Aretia. That is going to, Pavis, the city they took over, is going to be like a great kind of like launch pad for them to get like nearer to Aretia. So they know like they're coming. Also, they did lose some riders. Like it was a day in which they did lose some riders. And Violet heads straight up for the roof. She knows Xaden is up there. He looks very like chill. He's just like chilling, looking over the city of Aretia, but she could feel his turmoil through the bond. And Violet knew he was up on the roof, one, because she followed the bond to him, but also because of, in his letters, he said that he would always come up here to the roof to wait for his father to come home. And she also brought him some chocolate cake. And their dragons have also blocked them out. They're up there and they're like sitting and they're chatting, and they both realize that their dragons have blocked them out, which means that Taryn and Sorrengail are probably fighting. They're bickering. It was like a dangerous situation, and Taryn probably doesn't love that his dragon wife is off in danger without him. And Xaden tells the story of what happened today in that city, and he says that the city of Pavis was 10 times the size of Resun. That there were 10 times as many civilians, and they wound up losing the whole city. And he's like, we are just like so outmatched by the Venin. Even if we get this forge up and running, like we would have needed to do it 50 years earlier if we like really wanted to stand a chance against them. Like, I do not know how we will ever stand against them. And he talks about how he like nearly died, but Sorrengail got him out like just in the nick of time. She like scooped him up with her claws, but then Mira kicked him out of the battle because, and he's like, I like know it was because of you. Like Mira knows that if I die, you die. Which we're not sure if that's true. It doesn't work quite as strongly the other way. If Xaden dies, it might kill Sorrengail, but it might not. Sorrengail might be fine, and Violet would just be chilling. But it could kill Violet. And the way that they're both like each other's weaknesses, because if they die, the other one dies as well, is like something that is just becoming like an issue. And he's realizing like what a vulnerability that is, and a vulnerability that everyone can see. Later, Xaden and Violet go back to working on the translations of these journals. They have been spending kind of their evenings together. Violet is still getting the same translation in that passage about the wards, and she just like can't figure out what she's missing. Xaden is gone all week this week, watching a nearby town because they're worried the Venin are going to try to strike this town, and they're hoping that they can kind of like defend it against these Venin. Violet sends Xaden to bed. It's like almost midnight, and she's like, I'm going to head to bed soon. I'm just going to finish this passage. Why don't you go? I'll head up to bed. And so now she's in the library alone, and almost as soon as Xaden leaves, she is reading through like a separate passage, not one in the wards, and she realizes that that word she had thought was blood could also be translated breath. And it like clicks into place that when it said the 6 strongest, it meant dragons. It wants 6 dragons breathing fire on the word stones, not 6 riders putting blood on the word stones. And she thinks about like going and getting Dane immediately, but she knows that Dane would just like report it to the assembly immediately. He is a little too fond of authority and rules. And so instead she goes to Rhiannon, and she says to Rhiannon, I know how to raise the wards. I'm just not entirely sure that we should. It's a few days later, and they are at Rhiannon's family home. It is the second time that they have all come out here. So this is like a squad field trip that they have taken, like I said, a couple times in order to just like create some like unity that with outside of like the tensions and the pressure of being in Aretia at Ryerson House. And Violet is just like thinking about how quickly this house that she's like grown to really be like comfortable in and like enjoy spending time in would be destroyed if Venin attacked this town. Violet decides that she is going to tell the squad of riders and of flyers about the journal and about her project to raise the wards in Aretia, because the reason that she was like hesitant about raising the wards immediately is because if the wards are raised, then all of the flyers that they brought are not going to have access to their magic anymore, because their magic relies on whatever the wards block out. And she explains that like it's really important for them to get the wards up because the Venin are getting closer and closer, and so their best protection against the Venin is the wards. But she also understands that this is going to like really hobble the flyers, and she wants to like give them a heads up as like kind of a little bit of deference to them. Kat is obviously like super, super mad, and Violet explains that like, okay, I could have brought it to the assembly sooner, but she like really doesn't want to put the flyers in a bad spot. And she's like, as soon as Xaden gets back, like I'm going to have to tell them. Xaden is going to know immediately. Like there's no way for me to keep this from him, but I wanted to give you as much warning as I could. But she's like, I have a little bit of a backup plan. I've imbued some conduits with runes that I think could hold griffin magic, that like maybe they could use the rune magic to act as a way for the griffins to like store up the magic they need inside of the wards and be able to use it. So we're testing that theory. She's chatting again with that sage Venin, and the sage Venin says to her this: the one who watched thinks you'll never yield, that we should kill you before you grow into your full abilities. The rest turn for the power, but you will turn for something much more dangerous, much more volatile. You'll tear down the ward yourself when the time comes, and you won't do it for something as trite as power or as easily satiable as greed, but for the most illogical of moral emotions, love, or you'll die. You both will. She wakes up and Taryn is like chatting mentally with her, and he tells her he doesn't watch her dream because he has better things to do, but then he goes back to sleep. And then Violet curls up against Xaden and falls asleep too. I thought Xaden was still on vacay. She definitely hasn't told him about the wards yet. I don't know. Okay. Nothing much has changed. Riders are still dying while they fight the Venin, and the girlies are still going to class. They're going somewhere. Today, there's a fun, special, exciting field trip. They are going somewhere. Adarna wants to come with, but she like can't really fly for more than an hour at a time. She is still like really building up her muscles in her wings, and she can fly now, but it requires her like full strength, and she can't do it for very long. My note says, why am I getting teary about this? I do while I'm reading, less when I'm talking about it, but I'm reading, I do get like a little choked up when Adarna like can't do things. I'm like, sweet baby, little nugget. Anyway, Violet and Taryn are both trying to talk her out of coming, but she really wants to come. And they're like, why don't you go hang out with the other adolescents? I bet they're like doing something so fun today. And she's like, I am a bonded dragon. None of the other adolescents understand me, you know? And so they relent and wind up letting her come. The mission is to find the runes that the leadership has hidden within a 20-mile stretch of the mountains. Their dragons should be able to like sense the runes, and then they'll just go down and then use some runes to unlock these chests to get into these like runed chests. Okay. And the winner, whoever is able to gather their rune, the most runes, whoever wins gets a weekend pass, which means that they have leave. They can like leave, Aretia, there will be no homework, they can do whatever the heck they want. And obviously, they want that. They're split into groups of 4 based on their abilities. But before they can actually leave, Xaden and his squad are back from their week-long mission, and Violet like goes over and gives him a hug and then tells him, see, like he shouldn't have been in bed that morning, but I swear that nightmare scene ends with her like hugging Xaden, like curling up against him. Maybe I'm dumb. Quite possible. Violet is like, hey Xaden, I need to talk to you about something later, but like it needs to be like a full conversation and I need to go. And Xaden's like, let's do it now. And she's like, no, I literally just told you I need to go. Then Garrett is like, you should have seen him. Xaden just took down a Venin right outside that city. And Xaden is like, okay, well, really wasn't going to bring that up immediately. And Violet is like, oh my gosh, are you okay? That's so scary. And Xaden is like, obviously fine. And he's annoyed that Garrett was like, hear what he did. And Violet is like, I really do need to go. Like, I'll talk to you later. Kisses. And Xaden is like, oh, you figured out how to, like, set the wards up, didn't you? And she's like, yeah, we'll talk about it later. And he's like, oh, great. Let me know and I can like go do it right now. And she's like, I really have to go. And he's like, what's the difference? What did you miss? And she's like, it needs to be dragons, not riders. And he's like, okay, great. I'm going to go let everyone know. We'll have it set up before you even get back. We'll have the wards ready to go. And she's like, one, you can't because you'll need Taryn. He's the most powerful dragon here. And he's coming with me. But two, I like truly need to talk to you before you start putting wards in. Okay. Can you listen with your listening ears? Please put on your listening hat. Come on. And then Violet and Taryn leave. They are hiking. Taryn is not hiking. Taryn is like flying above. They're like walking towards this cave that is like carved into one of the cliffs in this mountain. And it's in a like narrow little canyon that is a little too small for Taryn to get into. It's small enough for a Darna, but because Violet doesn't want a Darna to like wear her wings out because she's going to need to fly all the way home, she's hiking alongside them. So she's just like trekking along. Taryn is like a little nervous that he's not immediately with them because he's always a little nervous when he can't be with his girls. But there is like too much snow to risk him trying to land anywhere closer because he could like create an avalanche. And again, it's just like pretty small. Kat is walking behind her and being like snarky as ever as they approach this cave that Taryn has like told them has like the energy of a rune. And then Kat starts picking at Sloane, and Violet is like, hey, do not pick on Sloane. Any hatred you have about me will be directed towards me. Sloane will be left out of this. And Sloane, and then they go back and forth, and Kat's like, that's only because you killed his brother. You are like, you're the reason her brother ended up dead, blah, 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 blah. And Violet is like, no, like, I promised to protect her. I promised to like take care of her. And Sloane says, Liam shouldn't have made you make that promise. You already carry the weight of protecting Xaden's life. It is unfair of him to burden you with mine too. Which is sweet. Sloane, like, once they, ended up in Aretia, Sloane and Violet have gotten along, like, so much better. They find the cave and they go inside. It is really gross and dark and smelly. Kat, luckily, has an unlit torch in her bag, and it has, like, a fire rune embedded in it from Marin. And Visa, who is another writer, is, like, surprised that they share runes. And Kat is like, of course we share runes. Like, whoever can make them does, and then we trade so everyone is equally equipped. It's like crazy that you guys don't. You call yourself a family, but you like don't even really help each other that much. And then Violet uses her lightning powers to light it. They continue into the cave, and they see that this cave opens into this like whole network of caverns. Taryn had kind of like warned them as such, but like they're like, whoa, this is crazy. And they're like exploring the cave together, and Visa is like chatting, and Visa says, Visa asks Violet if she will get a second signet because she has 2 dragons. And Violet is like, well, I'm not sure. She like asks Darna, and Darna's like, don't ask me. Signets come from the riders, not from the dragons. And so Violet's like, yeah, I don't think so. And Sloane then goes on to say, second signets only happen when a dragon bonds a rider in the direct familial line as its previous rider, but there is an equal chance of it causing madness. From what Thwart told me, that's why Croth wasn't punished for bonding Quinn. She's only the great-grandniece of her previous rider. Her signets are more powerful, but not entirely different. Violet, like, kind of is like, what the heck? Because if familial connections create 2 signets, guess who is the great-grandson of his dragon's previous rider? That's right, Xaden. Xaden's dragon Sorrengail. Sorrengail's previous rider was Xaden's grandfather, which means that Xaden probably has 2 signets. But they really don't have time to grapple with that because Violet, they find the chest with the rune carved into it. Adarna is getting nervous because she smells other dragons and they're like, oh my gosh, another squad must be approaching quickly. Like, we need to work quick. Kat makes like quick work of the rune. She is very good at runes. And Visa's talking about how much she wants the weekend pass because she really wants to like fly home to see her family and like convince them to move further away from the border. She like sent them the letter, but like she knows that if she were to go there in person, she could like really talk them into leaving and going to somewhere safer. But before they can get out of there, a orange dragon rounds the corner. It immediately claws Visa in the stomach, and she's like almost instantly dead, Violet supposes. And Violet manages to pull Kat out of the way. She's like on a mental 911 call with Taryn, but like Taryn can't get to them in this cave. It is like way too small. This dragon is looking scary. It's Solas. Solas has found them. Scary. He's obviously really mad because Violet did indeed kill his rider, Varish. Okay, that's where we're gonna leave things for now. Violet Solas appears in this cave, and this is, not great because Solas is Varesh's dragon, and obviously is not friends with Violet because of, the fact that she murdered his rider. So he's not a big fan. And Violet is also aware that she's in this cavern with Kat, who is third in line for the Pomerashi throne, and it would be a alliance diplomatic nightmare if she were to get murdered by some dragons, and knows that Xaden would be in massive trouble if she died. So she knows she needs to not only keep herself alive but Kat alive, even though Kat is kind of annoying. Luckily, sweet little Adarna is in the cave with them, and she pushes them against a wall and like wraps herself around them because she's fireproof, and she tells them to hold their breath so they don't breathe the burning air into their lungs. And she wraps them around and just stays there as Solas breathes a fire on them. And Kat's griffin got a little burnt around the edges, but besides that, they are mostly okay. And then Adarna charges straight for Solas, even though she's like half of his size. She's a brave little munchkin. She goes for him. Taryn is like racing there. He's like, I'll be there in like 3 minutes. And Taryn is giving instructions to Violet via her mental telephone to go for Solas's other eye, because remember, Taryn got the other one. So Violet tells Kat and Sloane to get out of there, and she is able to stab Solas in his other eye. So now he is completely blind, but she like can't use her like lightning magic in this cave without risking like electrocuting literally everyone, because they're like in a very small space together. So she can't use her signet. She's gonna have to figure out how else to get to Solas. And then Solas swipes out with a paw and knocks her, or not a paw, a claw. He is a dragon. Knocks her over. Kat is now at like the mouth of the cave. She's not like in direct line of fire of the dragon, but she is using her crossbow to shoot arrows at Solas, and the arrows that the Pomerashi people use are exploding arrows. So it does keep hitting him and like exploding him, but like she can't get to like the soft places on a dragon. The dragon's like underside and like in his joints where he like his scales have to be separated so he can move are like the places you need to get to if you're trying to kill a dragon. Violet, during all of that, Violet's conduit fell on the ground and it was glass, and so it shattered. So she has broken glass near her, and she picks up a piece of the broken glass, and while Adarna is like clamped onto Solas's neck on one side, she goes around the other side and stabs him with the broken glass. He's thrashing around, can't see, has someone clamped on his neck, someone else stabbing him with broken glass. He does whap Violet with his tail, and she like slams into the wall. He like is meanwhile trying to like dislodge Adarna. He's like slamming her into cave walls as well. Sloane is able to grab Violet and pull her out of the cave, and Kat is able to get like another arrow pointed at Solas, and Adarna flies off Solas, taking a chunk of Solas with her. And Adarna like falls silent, but Taryn assures Violet that like she's fine. She just like, I think like, got them. I don't know if she's unconscious or just like got everything knocked out of her for a second. And Violet's power is like burning her up on the inside because she's in the situation in which her power, her like emotionalness, which powers her, is taking over, but she can't use her power, and so it's just like building up internally. And Sloane is holding on to her, and Sloane is like siphoning away her power, and the heat of it is like lessening. And Sloane realizes that she drained Violet, and she's freaking out and scared because she thinks she somehow turned Venin. And Violet is like No, Taryn tells Violet that it's the same as Naelyn. It's just her signet. She's like, she is a siphon. And while they're like in the mouth of the cave trying to like calm down, Adarna walks out of the cave, blood covering her mouth and the poison barb on her tail. And it's very clear that like she killed Solas. And Taryn says to her, Slayer, because, and I like think complimentary, Slayer / complimentary, because typically being a dragon slayer is like a very, we'll talk more about it, but like a very heavy mark on another dragon. But in this instance, like everyone is proud of her. Later, Violet is at the healers and Xaden bursts in and is like surprised to find both Violet and Kat like sitting there. And Kat is like, she saved my life. The least I could do was make sure she was seen by a healer. And then she stands up and says, thank you, Sorrengail. Xaden already knows kind of what happened because Sorrengail obviously relayed the series of events to him, and he is like a little frustrated that Violet didn't immediately come and get him, but is mostly grateful that she was unharmed. Although he's like a little annoyed that she risked her life to save Kat's, even though like she had a great reason. They just like spend a little bit of time talking about how in love with each other they are. Xaden says, "You finally ready to ask me about the deal I made with your mother?" Okay. All right. Obviously, Xaden has known that Violet has wanted to ask about it. He was just like waiting for Violet to find the courage to ask about it. Okay. Okay. And Violet is like, how the heck am I supposed to know exactly what questions to ask you? How am I supposed to know that? And Xaden is like, the second you have a question, you ask it. Seems pretty simple. I would simply shove him off a balcony if he said that to me. To be honest, in this moment, I would simply shove him off the balcony. Violet says in response, simple, Brennan is alive. You made a deal with my mother for my life. She put those scars on your back. Tell me, Xaden, is it only the secrets about my family you want me to dig out of you? You holding anything back about Mira? She's like, so the thing is, Xaden, there's no way for me to know what kind of questions to ask because truly would have never thought to ask you about my dead brother being not dead. You know, and Xaden is like, I literally would have told you any of it if you would have asked. And Violet is like, I literally did ask about the scars on your back last year. I literally asked about them. And Xaden says, that was last year. The rules of the game were different. Oh my gosh, keep up, girl. Xaden is out here gaslight, gatekeeping, and girl bossing. Like, too close to the sun. He's far too close to the sun with his gaslighting behavior in this situation. They talk about the deal that Xaden made with Violet's mother, and he's like, I'm glad for it because otherwise I probably would have murdered you before I realized I was in love with you. So, like, I'm really grateful for that deal. And he's just, like, being so annoying. He's like, I need you to stop being so scared of the answers or waiting for me to give them to you. Demand the truth. I need you to love all of me, not just what you decide to see. Okay. Like, the moral, he, like, gives, like, a big, long spiel, and, like, they talk about, like, the battle axes and the armoire metaphor, and essentially his thesis statement is that Violet should trust him and know that if he has secrets, which he does still have some secrets, he would never put her in danger. So she needs to trust him, like, despite his secrets. And then he says, again, I mean, I would have already pushed him off the balcony, but if I hadn't pushed him off the balcony at this point, this would have done it. Love, you're the smartest person I know. If you wanted the answers, you should have asked the right questions. I'm sorry. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Anyway, Violet isn't thrilled. She's not as upset as me because she hasn't physically shoved Xaden off of a cliff at this point. But she does say, let's put your theory to the test. Do you want me to demand the truth? To ask you something real? What's your second signet? I know you have one. You told me that Sorrengail was bonded to your grandfather, which makes you a direct descendant. If a dragon bonds a family member, it can strengthen a signet. But a direct descendant will either produce a second signet, or madness. And you seem pretty sane to me. And he starts to be like, looking real nervous. Like, he's real nervous. And luckily, someone saves his booty because someone starts pounding on the door, and it's Brennan. And Brennan is like, hey, besties, a horde of wyverns are headed from the city that they were at most recently for the cliffs. And Xaden's like, okay, Violet, are you ready to raise those wards? Or would you like to wait until the wyverns are actually at the gate? And they get the 6 dragons together to raise the wards while everyone else at Ryerson House like prepares for this big battle against the Venin. But like hopefully they're thinking that they can have the wards up before the wyverns reach the cliffs, and they won't need to battle because that'll prevent the wyverns from getting any closer. And Violet is explaining to Brennan that they need a dragon from each den. And Brennan is really impressed with her work, and he offers to mend her because she's a little like beaten up and like burnt from her battle with Soul Loss earlier, and she declined. Adarna isn't responding to Violet mentally, but she's fine. And Taryn explains that she's actually meeting with the elders right now, like being questioned by the elders, but her actions have been found justifiable. But he says, but slaying another dragon is a heavy mark upon the soul, even when it is in defense of you or yourself. And Taryn is like pretty upset with himself that he wasn't able to kind of take that burden from Adarna. Like he really does see himself as kind of Adarna's guardian in a way, and to put her, although like she would very much not love that, to put her in a position in which she had to bear the weight of that is something that Taryn doesn't love. Then they go out, they blow fire, the 6 dragons blow fire on the wardstones, and the wards are raised in Aretia, and they immediately go fly off to defend Aretia. Taryn is like super fast and speedy. He's the first one there, and it gives Violet like a chance to chat before they battle. And he's like, hey, wasn't listening to your romantic disputes. I have better things to do. But he tells her to like trust her judgment because like it's the reason he chose her. He's like, I chose you because you have great judgment. You're a smart girl. So like listen to yourself, trust your own judgment. Violet can feel the edge of the wards. She knows something happened. The wards feel different, or like they feel like they're there. They feel substantial in a way that they do in Basgiath. Xaden and Sorrengail are the next to arrive, and they're still pretty alone, and Xaden wants to use the minutes before battle when they're alone to continue the conversation. And Violet says to him, spare me whatever bullshit you're about to impart. My stomach twists and I lower my voice into my best Xaden impression. Ask me. I shake my head. Yeah, the first real question I pose, you duck out the door like a coward. And Xaden says, it never occurred to me that you'd ask about my second signet. I like wanted you to ask every question, but not that one. Violet, come on, don't be silly goose. And Violet's like, you had to have known that I was going to ask eventually. Like, you made it very clear that like your grandfather was bonded to Sorrengail beforehand, and this is like a known thing that happens with the second signet. Like, some part of you must have wanted me to ask. And then she says, sometimes I feel like I don't know you. I study the harsh lines of his face as his jaw flexes. How am I supposed to really love you if I don't know you? I can't, and I think we both know that. How long do you think it takes for someone to fall out of love? He studies the skyline. A day, a month. I'm asking because I don't have any experience with it. What the heck? I fold my arms to keep from giving in to the impulse to jab him with the sharp points of my elbow. I'm asking, he continues, his throat working as he swallows, because I think it will take you all of a heartbeat once you know. Okay, we love the drama. We love the drama, and I do feel that Xaden in his free time has been rewatching Gossip Girl. I do feel like this is the kind of just like dialogue that I would expect from teen drama. Like, this would feel quite at home on the CW. And I'm like hoping, side note, Fourthwing is being adapted for Amazon, and I'm like hoping it has CW vibes. I'm like, there's a couple of these romanticies that are being adapted, and I'm hoping they like are able to capture some of the like, I don't want to say like silliness, because I don't know if this is silly, but like the like earnestness that is like a little cliche and silly, but like there's like a seriousness, like a Vampire Diaries vibe. Okay, I want this vibe to be a little Vampire Diaries in the best ways. This is not derogatory. I love Vampire Diaries. I just like worry we're gonna go too serious. Like, this isn't Game of Thrones. This is Gossip Girl, but with dragons. Violet's getting really nervous now. She is like, what's your second signet if it's going to make me fall out of love with you? And she's like, just tell me. And Violet starts trying to like guess things. And Xaden's like, stop. And Violet's like, who else knows? Who else knows what your second signet is? And Xaden is like, no one knows. And Violet says, I deserve better than this. Tell me the truth. And Xaden says, you've always deserved better than me. And no one knows, because if they did, I'd be dead. And Violet is like thinking through this, and she realizes pretty quickly there's only one signet that is like a death sentence, and he must be able to read minds. And he goes on to explain that he can't quite read minds, but he can read intentions. He can read like the instinct behind the thought. Taryn is also like hearing this for the first time, and he's feeling really betrayed because this is the first time he's heard about it. His dragon wife didn't even tell him. Wow. A little bit of drama in the dragon marriage. And Xaden says, there are some things that even mates can't share. Okay? stupid. I can't believe you put strife between my boy Taryn and his wife, Sorrengail. Xaden then looks over at Violet and says, less than a minute. That's how long it took you to fall out of love with me. And Violet is like, don't read my mind. Whatever. Actually, she says, don't read my whatever. And Xaden says, I didn't. First of all, you have your shields up. And second, I don't need to. It's all over your face. Say something. And Violet takes a second and then she says, my love isn't fickle. So you'd better live because I'm ready to ask you all of the questions. And then it's time. The wyverns are approaching. They are preparing for battle. And Taryn is like, let's go. And then hundreds of wyverns approach with 17 Venin on their back. This is a huge horde. And it's a good thing the wards are up because otherwise they would be completely toast. And Xaden says to Violet, I love you. Even if you believe nothing else I say, please believe that. And the first wyvern tries to cross the wards and immediately dies. He falls to the ground and dies, which means the wards work. And the sage Venin calls off the attack and they just leave. Yay! When they get back to Ryerson House, the mood is very celebratory and they're called into a meeting, but before they can really celebrate, they're called into a meeting with the assembly. A letter has arrived from Melgren. He wants to meet tomorrow with only 2 marked ones, along with Violet and Mira. And then before they kind of leave and can deal with that, Serena, one of the Griffin riders that we've encountered a few times, comes up and is like, hey guys, I actually still can wield. So there's something wrong with your wards because we know the wards should block out the Griffin riders as well. The only thing that should allow it in is the dragon's magic. The meeting is to take place at Athbine. Violet spends the night before in the library. She still doesn't know how she feels about the Xaden thing and she wants to process. I don't know why she doesn't go to her room that she shared with Rhiannon. I guess she's doing research on the wards. There's sort of a purpose, but she falls asleep on her books. Girlie, you have a second room. Go sleep in there. At the meeting with Athbine, they are headed there with 10 dragons, which is more than they were supposed to have, but they send a few of them to go hide in the nearby woods, so they won't be brought there. Adarna has gotten left behind, and she's really cranky about it. And Sorrengail and Taryn are also fighting. Sorrengail and Taryn are not standing next to each other, and it's very upsetting. The dragon husband and wives are not getting together. There's a quote from the book that says, Mom and Dad are fighting, and everyone knows it. Xaden comes over to Violet and it's the first time she's seen him today. And he says to her, you didn't come to bed last night. Violet puts her shield up as soon as she sees Xaden walking towards her. And Violet says, I was in the library with Dane and a few others trying to figure out what went wrong with the wards. And Xaden is like, oh, cool. Did you find anything? And Violet says, no, I would have told you if I found something. And Xaden says, let me in just for a second. I need to tell you something mentally. And Violet does, and Xaden says, if you decide to tell them what I am as punishment for the crimes I've committed against you, I'll understand. Violet says, I need to know something. Did you ever use your signet to glean information to influence my feelings in any way? And Xaden says, never, but sometimes I sent you my intentions without even realizing it. And Taryn says, hey, bestie, I could torch him if you wanted me to. I could catch him on fire for that. That's kind of rude. But you seem kind of attached. And Violet says, I'm not going to turn you in, but we'll be fighting about this later. And Xaden says, aye, aye. Mira and Violet are ready, and they walk into the clearing, and Melgren is waiting for them, and he is clearly angry. Violet's like, I don't need a special signet to see that. He looks pissed. He is followed by his dragon, Kodog, who's even bigger than Taryn. We've met Kodog a few times, the largest dragon that there is in the Vale. Taryn puts his head right above Violet and growls at everyone. Oh, I love Taryn so much. General Sorrengail is there as well, and Violet just notes that she looks exhausted. She looks just so tired and worn out. And Xaden is like, hey, tell us why you called this meeting, Melgren. And Melgren is really still annoyed about the wyverns that Xaden left all over the place and how big of a mess that has been to clean up. And Mira is like you won't help anyone who's outside of our borders. This is just really not acceptable behavior to me. And Melgren is like, yes, when you abandon ship in the middle of a hurricane, you save those you can in the dinghy, then cut off the hands of anyone else who tries to climb aboard so they don't pull you under. He is like, yeah, we have to. This was a dire situation. We had no choice. This was not a situation in which we could help everyone. And Xaden is like, okay, are we here for actual reasons? Besides the evil villain lecture. And I believe that is actually a quote from the book. Crazy. And Melgren is like, hey, did you ever wonder why we let so many riders leave and join your cause? They're going to overrun us at Samara. They'll come for us on Solstice and they'll win. Because remember, he's psychic. And so he's forcing this battle that's happening at Samara, and he knows that they're going to need as many riders as possible, and it likely still won't be enough. Violet mentally asks Xaden about everyone's intentions that are there, because it's General Sorrengail and Melgren, but there's also like a few other like professors and leadership from the military. And this guy named Ulysses says who's on their team, who's one of the four. So it's Mira, Violet, Brennan, and I guess Ulysses have come as like the representatives from Aretia. And Ulysses says, if you have already seen the outcome. Violet asks about the intentions of the people gathered there, and Xaden says that they mostly have their shields up, so we can't tell for sure, but it seems like they are, the one guy whose shields are not up, he seems terrified, so yeah. And then Ulysses, the guy that has come with them, says, if you have already seen the outcome, what do you expect us to do about it? And Melgren says, change the outcome by fighting on your side. And Xaden says, we do not fly for you. And then General Sorrengail says for the first time, she speaks the first time, no, but you fly for the Empyrean, and the hatching grounds in the Vale will be compromised. And Melgren says, I don't expect you to ally yourselves with us for nothing. Fight with us at Samara, and I have it on King Tauri's word that we will respect the independence of your riot and the city that you've taken refuge in. This is our only offer. You are either our allies or our enemies. And then Brennan, who's been just like hiding in the corner, walks in. And Violet just like watches as her mother goes through like all of the emotions. She's like trying, like her mother's clearly like trying to hold herself together as she watches her son, who she like thoroughly believed was dead for the last 6 years, walk into the room. And Brennan says, we rule by committee, and I think I'm safe by speaking for the quorum when I say that we do not defend kingdoms who sacrifice neighboring civilians, let alone their children, so they can hide safely behind their wards. And General Sorrengail just says, Brennan? And Mira is like, seriously, Brennan? We were fine. Like, why did you have to insert yourself? And Brennan says, when all of your children stand against you, perhaps the time has come for self-reflection. He's talking to his mother. This meeting is over. We deny your offer of peace and happily accept war. And Melgren says, we're done here. And then he turns to General Sorrengail and says, do what you need to say goodbye. Their mom turns to her children and says, Brennan, like, just like is so overwhelmed with like seeing him. And then she turns to Mira and is like, he's alive. And Violet says, he's the one who mended me when I took a venom blade to my side. And her mom says, you've known for months. And Xaden is standing there, and General Sorrengail is like, can I have a moment alone with my children? And Xaden says, yeah, sure. Have fun. And he pieces out, and so it's just like the four of them. And Mira's like, what do you want? General Sorrengail says, I'm not sure it matters, but what I want the most, what I've always wanted, is for my children to live. Whatever wards you've raised from Warwick's journal will fall. Cut open the body of the wyvern who died crossing your border yesterday. And she explains that she like knows what's going on at the borders because like it has been important to her to keep tabs on the place where she like knows her daughters. Well, turns out all of her children are located and has been like doing her best to just kind of like watch them from afar and to see if they remain safe. And she talks about how the wyverns that Xaden dropped at all of the outposts that had crossed the borders into Navarre at large, they were like cold. The stones inside of them that were used to create them were just like cold rocks. And if they cut open the wyvern that is in Aretia, that will not be the case. Their wards are like not as strong, which they already suspected because the Griffin Riders could wield magic still. And then General Sorrengail says, fix your wards, or they will decline to nothing. Warwick lied in his journals. And she goes on to explain that, like, Warwick essentially wanted to, like, hoard that power. He didn't want everyone to have access to the power of the wards. And so he's, didn't completely tell the truth in his version of the journal. And she hands over Lyra's journal from the archives, the journal that Violet had when she was interrogated and was taken from her. And she's like, hopefully this has the information you need to fix your wards. General Sorrengail goes on to say, you don't have to understand my choices. You simply have to survive. I love you enough to bear the weight of your disappointment. Oh, I love General Sorrengail. I do. They head back to Aretia, and like before they even go back to the house, they check on the wyvern body, and there is a polished chunk of onyx marked with a rune, and it's humming. Like it's clearly very much active. And as soon as they, like, touch it, the wyvern's eyes, like, blink open. Violet immediately, like, hits it with lightning. It's like, nope. And the lightning does, like, kill it for sure. But, like, the wards did not work. And Mira says, if you don't figure out what Warwick lied about, we are in huge trouble. It's been a week since that meeting with leadership. And Violet has been asking Brennan to like rethink their position on Samara. She like feels it is part of their duty to go help and provide support if they can, but like he won't budge. Violet and Xaden have also not really talked since then as well. And Xaden summons Violet to the sparring gym. Xaden's like, hey, we can talk about our secrets and stuff mentally, unless there's someone else who can read minds here, like we are safe and sound inside our little mental telephone. Since his secret is like very dangerous, it's like the best thing for them to do. And Violet, and he says to her, we aren't going to fight in our bedroom. We will fight on the sparring mat. And Violet's like, since when is that a rule? Like, we have definitely fought in our room before. And Xaden says, since now. Okay, now you make up a rule. We're making up rules now. It's rule time. New game. We make up rules. And Violet says, no more secrets. No more silly question game. No tests. It's full disclosure or nothing. And Xaden says, done. And Violet's like, you really agreed to that like far too easily. But he assures her like he means it. And then Xaden says to her, I need to know that you'll be here. That no matter what happens, you'll come back so we can talk it out or fight it out. And for you to trust me enough to realize I'd never hurt you. Violet agrees, and she says she loves him, and they talk about his mother. That's like one of the first things Violet asks about. And we learn that Xaden's mother was only married to his father for like a political alliance, and the alliance stipulations only required her to stay until her heir was 10 years old. So as soon as Xaden turned 10, she like pieced the heck out, and he hasn't seen her since. I'm sure that will never come up again. I'm sure this is not going to be something that plays into the next books. Just kidding. I'm sure we're going to see Xaden's mom eventually. It would be so weird if Rebecca Yarros just like dropped this detail and then we like truly never did see his mom. That would be crazy to me. Okay. And he like goes on to explain. They like talk more about his signet, and like he's like, I swear like the only person who knew about my signet, besides myself obviously, was Sorrengail. And he talks about how he was able to hide it because his shadow wielding was so powerful that like people like accepted that he didn't have a second signet, just like a really powerful first signet. And then he gives her some new daggers as a present. It is now 2 days from the solstice, which is when that attack on Samara is supposed to happen, and the assembly is staying strong. Jasmine is working on Lyra's journal because it's in another language that she's an expert in and Violet does not know. She hasn't found anything substantial yet in terms of the difference between what Violet did and the instructions in Lyra's journal. Felix has started making conduits for everyone, which is great. And everyone is also working on imbuing alloy daggers in all their spare time because the vibes are like very focused on the war, because they know if the wards do fall at Samara, like it doesn't bode well for like the future of them. They'll essentially be fighting a war on two fronts. Then they'll be fighting the Venin, and they will also be fighting like Navarre's army, possibly. And all second and third years are being instructed on runes now. It's battle brief time. The map has been updated with the latest Venin movement. It's clear that they're moving towards Samara and preparing for the battle Melgren foresaw. They're like waiting just on the other side of the border, essentially, for them. And someone asks why like they aren't engaging, why they aren't doing anything. And Quinn says, because we're spiteful. And Brennan says, we're not engaging because the assembly voted and decided the casualty rate among riders and flyers would be far too great. A battle of this size could annihilate our forces, leaving the rest of the continent undefended. But Violet like kind of feels like that explanation sounds a lot like the reason that Navarre refused to help the people on the other side of the border. And so the writers start talking about how like their families are in danger. And although like they sent out these letters to have people move away from the borders, like not all of their families did. Like it is a big task to move from the borders. And also they have like friends and people. Like there's a lot of civilians that will be immediately impacted by this event. And Brennan is like, okay, let's spin this a little bit. What would you be doing if you were Melgren right now? He's trying to like shift the narrative, regain control of this classroom. And someone says they're going to have a direct line to the hatching ground, so I would worry about that. And then Violet starts thinking, and she's like, no, they wouldn't. The wards would just follow their natural position, which is like 3 or 4 hours outside of Basgiath, like the wards here at Aretia. They've extended them using this alloy, but like the wards themselves create like a bubble that would include the Vale, the hatchling grounds. And Violet realizes that Melgren had been lying about the hatching grounds. And Violet says, how long have the Venin been sitting on the border? And Brennan is like 3 days. They've moved in 3 days. And Taryn says, okay, we need to act now. Like Violet has like realized something. And Violet like packs up her things to leave because she needs to go talk to Xaden ASAP. A bunch of people come with her to like have this conversation. Or maybe Xaden comes to battle brief. I'm not entirely sure. But now everyone's involved in this conversation. Xaden is here. And Violet is like, Samara is a distraction. They aren't going to take down the wards at Samara. They can't fly past them. Samara is the distraction. I think they are waiting for the wards to fall. And then they're going to head for those hatching grounds. And Sawyer is like, if the battle was going to take place somewhere else, Melgren would see it. And Sloane, says, not if there are more than 3 of us. Like, Melgren can't see if there are more than 3 rebel children gathered. It's the Alice Cullen psychic loophole. And so if the battle were going to take place with the marked one, he wouldn't be able to see it. Also, like, Sloane is, like, fully Team Violet now, and I, like, don't know when that happened. I guess when they were in the cave together. I guess when you almost get burnt up alive, it really, like, changes things for you. We love that for her. And Violet's like, all his forces are concentrated on Samara when they should be concentrating on Basgiath and the Vale. And Xaden says, do you want to go back? And Riddick is like, of course. And Sloane is like, they would have never come to our aid. And Kat, who is also apparently here, is like, they have definitely never come to ours. And they argue back and forth, but Xaden is like, I don't care. Also, they don't have much time to argue. Like, if they're going to go, they need to leave, like, immediately. It's a fairly long flight, and the wyverns are faster than dragons. And Xaden, like, literally only cares about Violet's opinion, which is stupid. I'm sorry. He's like, I'll do whatever you want to do, Violet. I feel like he does this a lot, like, the back half of this novel. And I find that annoying. Like, sometimes it's nice when you make a decision. I mean, of course I want him to listen to Violet's opinion, but, like, to put the weight of all of these very large choices on her is actually not as, like, kind of a gesture as I think Xaden thinks it is. But Violet does want to go. Violet wants to go to defend Basgiath. They're, like, preparing to leave. Violet is helping Adarna get in her little harness, and Addie, in my notes I call Adarna Addie. And she's complaining about having to wear a harness at all, but it's, like, a long flight. And Violet's like, if you don't use it, that's fine, but, like, this is the only way that you can come with us is if you, like, have this harness and you can, like, clip in to Taryn if need be. And Violet says, I get it. I know you don't want to be carried. Sometimes I don't want to fly in a saddle, but it's what I need in order to ride. It's your choice. You can come in a harness or you can stay behind. And Adarna is like, dragons don't answer to humans. And Taryn says, no, but they do answer to their elders. And then Adarna says, yeah, but only the elders of their den. And you're not the elder of my den. And Taryn's like, okay. And Adarna's like, I'm going to start my own den. And then I'm going to be the elder. And I'm going to be the only one who I have to listen to. Anyway, she does wind up wearing the harness. The Griffin Riders aren't coming because they wouldn't be able to yield under Basgiath's wards, so they're staying behind. And also the Assembly voted against sending people, so really the only people going are Xaden, Mira, Violet, and the cadets mostly. I don't think there are a lot of full riders that are going. Marin gives Violet a crossbow to use with exploding arrows as, like, a gift from the Griffins. They arrive at Basgiath 18 hours later, and they encounter literally no patrols on their journey because all troops have been redirected to Samara. And Violet's main task once they arrive at Basgiath is to find her mother and, like, convince her of the situation and how important it is that they do something immediately. Adarna is being sent to the Vale to wait things out, and they're like, Adarna, we need you to go to the Vale because, like, the Feathertails need protection, and you'll be, like, their last line of defense, Adarna. Like, we need you to go. Adarna does not buy it for a second, and she's like, no, I'm gonna come with you guys. Taryn drops Violet off at the courtyard, and Sorrengail and Xaden immediately follow. They're back at Basgiath, and Mama Sorrengail arrives, strolls right into the courtyard, and is like, really, Violet? You couldn't use the front door? And here she is. You might not believe me, but your wards are in immediate danger. And General Sorrengail says, not possible, cadet. They're heavily guarded every moment of every day. The biggest threats to our wards would be you. And they continue trying to convince her of this impending threat. And General Sorrengail continues to be like, you don't know anything. They finally convince her that, like, okay, at least they could go down and check and make sure the wards are under control. And Taryn warns Violet that, like, Garrett's dragon is sensing bad vibes. And apparently he's good at sensing vibes. The wards are down in the basement, and it's giving Violet some PTSD flashbacks to when she was, like, tortured for a few days. And so she's trying to work through that a little bit. They get down to the door to the wards, and unfortunately the guards standing outside the wards are dead. And General Sorrengail for the first time is like, oops, you guys might have been right. They walk in, and there's a dragon guarding the wardstone. It's Bade. And the wardstone itself is also different from the one at Aretia. One, it's, like, twice as big, like, around. It's twice as large around. Also, it's, like, actively on fire. And General Sorrengail charges at Bade, but the dragon, like, swipes her away. And immediately she, like, bangs her head on her wall. Xaden uses his shadows to, like, pull both General Sorrengail and Mira, like, out of harm's way and back away from Bade. Violet is talking to Taryn and telling him to, like, hurry down to where they're at because obviously the wardstone, like, goes up to the sky. They, like, came through the tunnels, but, like, Taryn can come from above and get to it. He's on his way, but it like isn't an easy location to get to. And then Dane says, I didn't know Dane was down here, but here he is. Dane, hey. Dane says, what are you doing, Barlow? And Jack says, what I promised. And there's like fire all around here. And people are like trying to duck out of the way as like Bade is like breathing fire and things are going crazy, blah, 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 blah. Riddick gets hit. Jack, during all this chaos, stabs Bade in the neck, which is crazy person behavior. That's his dragon. And Bade like falls over and knocks the ward stone over it. It cracks in half, and the wards have fallen. Like they can feel it almost immediately that the wards are down. The ward stone is cracked on the ground between them, and everyone is running around being like, what the heck just happened? Why did Jack just kill his own dragon? And Xaden is like, you know that will kill you, right? I don't know if anyone told you like the basic rules of Dragon Riders school, but like if your dragon is dead, you're dead. And Jack says, that's the thing. I'm not going to die. They have us thinking we're the inferior species, but did you see how easily I controlled her? How easily the energy she bonded with us is replaced? And then Nolan appears, and Nolan is like, you're better than this. You can choose. And it's clear that Jack is expecting Nolan to come over and like mend him, because Jack and Nolan have clearly been working together, and Jack has turned Venin. And Jack starts ranting about how stupid it is that they let the dragons kind of decide who's going to be the most powerful. He's like especially mad about this because Taryn selected Violet, who's like the weakest among them in his eyes, to bond with like the most powerful dragon. And he's just like, he's a little bit of he's giving incel, you know? He is like a little bit. And Violet has like worked out the fact that Jack has actually turned Venin like long time ago, like before even the first challenge with him. And that's why when he grabbed her and she was in like so much pain, he was like pushing his magic into Violet. And she's like not sure how this is possible with the wards being up. She's like not sure how he's existing as like a Venin with powers inside the wards. Jack explains that he can still channel through the ground even though he's like not at full strength, and Nolan has been like working to like keep Jack in check, and he's the reason they developed that signet blocking elixir. Nolan has been like put in charge of trying to like heal Jack to like bring him back from being a Venin and to like control his Venin state. Xaden goes to stab Jack, but before he can, Jack grabs Dane and starts draining his magic, and Xaden knocks Jack out. He like conks him on the head. He's knocked out. And Dane is like, okay, the wards are down. How many riders do we have here? And General Sorrengail says 119 cadets plus whoever you brought. Pretty much everyone else has been sent to Samara. And Dane is like, that will not be enough. And Mira's like, okay, well, it has to be. That's all we have. And Dane says, we have 10 hours and then we are all dead. Half an hour later, they've gathered everyone at the college into a makeshift battle brief. Everyone's feeling nervous because the Venin are coming and they're probably going to lose. They're like very much outmatched. Devera explains that the wyverns are on the way, but they didn't even bother stopping in Samara, which is, you know, the pros of that are there were no casualties really in Samara. But the bad news is that they're coming straight for Basgiath. They are not going to have much time. Dane did dig through Jack's memories and realized that there are lures planted all over the college, which means that the Venin are going to know exactly where to go. They're going to be called straight here. They're not going to get lost along the way. Scribes are evacuating already, and they're taking like the most important documents with them. And first years who have not manifested a signet yet will also be should be prepared to leave as well. General Sorrengail says, the assignments given tonight have been decided with the best interest of Basgiath and the Vale in mind. There are incredibly powerful signets among you, gifted riders, but I will not lie to you. We are outnumbered. We are underpowered. However, the odds may be against us, but the gods are with us. Whether you left after threshing or stayed, we are all Navarian riders, bonded for the purpose of defending dragonkind in the darkest hour, and this is it. And Violet's like, hey, Adarna, I want you to go back to Aretia. I think that would be for the best. Start flying back to Aretia. And Adarna is like, no, I'm staying here with you. And Violet knows that she's not the boss of Adarna, so that shall be what happens. General Sorrengail starts, passing out assignments. And crazily, because we're in a book and we only care about so many characters, Mira and Xaden both get assigned to work with Fourthwing. So they're going to be defending a section of the sky. Essentially each squad is going to get a section of airspace that they're going to be in charge of defending. That's how this battle's going to work. And Violet is like, hey, I don't think we should abandon the Wordstone. I know it is broken, but like I really think that perhaps Brennan can mend it, and like we should give him the best opportunity to do that. And General Sorrengail is like, no. Anyway, go to bed, sleep for a few hours while you can. We'll see you tomorrow for battling. Bye. Xaden and Violet head to bed together, and Xaden is like, hey, we could leave right now if you want it. We could run away. And Violet is like, and abandon literally everyone else? And Xaden is like, sure. I can't live without you. So part of me is screaming to carry you back to Aretia. And I am like, why? What the heck, Xaden? Calm the heck down. Xaden is just like Violet's mom. Violet is actually just dating her mother. Because Xaden, given all of his morals, is like, Violet, if you just want to peace out, we can. Which is like Violet's mom's thing. She's like willing to sacrifice anything to keep her children safe. Xaden is willing to sacrifice anything, including like a lot of lives to keep Violet safe. They're the same. Same thing. Violet doesn't get furious about it, but literally hates her mother's guts for doing the same thing. Okay, get a grip. They're busy making out when Rhiannon knocks on the door. Brennan and Kat are here. Actually, Brennan, Kat, and a bunch of the Griffin Riders are actually here. And Brennan says, like, he realized almost immediately when they left that, like, he didn't want to be on, like, the wrong side of history. He knew he needed to come be with his siblings. And he says to Violet, I left you and Mira here to fight this on your own once before, and I will never do it again. And then Kat says to Violet, we don't abandon our drifts. We fight. And right now the Griffins are going to be sent to hunt for the lures. And then Violet says to Brennan, can you mend the Wardstone? Then they talk to General Sorrengail, and General Sorrengail agrees that Fourthwing can guard the airspace above the Wardstone just to give Brennan time to mend it. It's battle time. It's just before dawn. Everyone is getting into their places, and Taryn is like, okay, they're almost here. They're arriving. Their squad is really nervous. Riddick and Sawyer and Rhiannon are talking to Violet about, like, just like how scared they are of battle. And Xaden is like, yeah, it always kind of feels really scary. You just like learn how to deal with it. They're chatting strategy. They are like to stand their dragons and stay in the air if at all possible, because the Venin can drain their magic like through the ground if they are on the ground. Xaden is also here. She flew in on the backs of one of the Griffins because Griffins aren't such stinkers and they'll let people ride with them who are not their Fliers. And she just wanted to be able to compare both journals, which like I think both journals exist in Aretia. I like don't really understand why Xaden's here, but I guess she is here so they can maybe attempt to fix this Wardstone ward. I don't know. It's important that she's here. The reasoning that she's here doesn't totally make sense to me. But she's here to see if she can figure out why the wards in Aretia were faulty and to see if they can fix the wards here at Basgiath, because that would be super duper helpful. Adarna is also here, and Violet is like, promise me you'll stay hidden. And then Adarna's like, yeah, look at this. And she, look at this. And she disappears. She's actually like, I'm actually super camouflageable, so don't even worry about me. And apparently Tyrion's like, yeah, black dragons can like disappear into the night because they're black. And Violet's like, okay. And Adarna's like, I'm not going to leave you this time. I left you in the last battle, but I won't make the same mistake again. And Xaden and Violet are doing their like pre-battle emotional goodbyes. And Xaden says, I love you. The world does not exist for me beyond you. I couldn't tell you that the last time we flew into a fight, and I should have. And Violet says, I love you too. Do me a favor and don't die. I don't want to live without you. And Xaden agrees. We don't die today. And then it starts raining, and thanks to Mom and Sorrengail, it's a little gift for Violet because it is easier for Violet to wield lightning in a storm. It's going to make it very difficult for the Griffins to fly, so they will instead be on the ground, kind of working to transport the injured and things around. Violet gets on Taryn and sees this like wave of approaching wyverns. They are like overwhelming in numbers. They like really underestimated how many people were coming, and they know that a second wave will be following. Violet is really second guessing their plan, but like they don't have time to change them. And Violet knows that her first strike is going to be really important because she wants to get down as many wyverns as she can with like kind of like a big strike, because she won't have to worry about being as like carefully aimed because there won't be any dragons mixed in, where later she won't be able to like strike out as like blindly without worrying that she'll strike one of theirs. So Violet electrifies a cloud. It only gets a few wyverns because most of them are able to kind of like direct away from it, but it does get a few. And then she starts striking out against individual wyverns. Everyone's doing their part. There are only 3 Venin in this wave, and Violet knows that she needs to target them. And one of them like approaches Violet pretty quickly and is like, "You're the one he wants." And she's fighting this wyvern on the back of, or this Venin on the back of Taryn, and Rhiannon jumps over to help Violet, and Violet like gets an immediate flashback to what happened with Liam, because that's exactly how Liam died, was he jumped over to Taryn's back to help her fight off a wyvern, and she's like scared it's gonna happen to Rhiannon again, but Rhiannon helps and she's fine. Melgren is 10 waves out, or 10 minutes out, but they know like the second wave of wyvern won't be far behind them. Meanwhile, while this battle is going on, Sawyer's leg does get completely bitten off by a wyvern. Violet jumps off of Taryn to help Sawyer, and Taryn is like furious about it. He's like, "Get back on my back," but she didn't. She jumped off. She's able to like grab Sawyer, and then she jumps off Sawyer's dragon's back with Sawyer and says like, "Taryn, catch me!" And Taryn does catch them, and then he's mad at her for that too. He's like, "How did you know I was gonna catch you?" And Violet's like, "You wouldn't let me fall." So cute, so fun. They land. Sawyer's taken off to the healers, but while Violet's on the ground, a Venin pops up. Kat tries to like run towards Violet to help, but Violet is like, "Stay back." And the Venin tells Violet they have orders not to kill her because their like leader really wants to use Violet himself. A second Venin arrives. Violet is able to kill the first, but the second manages to shatter her conduit. Taryn and Xaden are racing for her, but they won't make it in time. But luckily, Adarna is right there. Adarna roasts the Venin with her fire. It's her first little fire breathing incident. And then she eats its head. She's so sneaky. She was like waiting right out of sight, but she's like a camouflage sneaky girl. So they like did not see her at all. And Kat is like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Did you just eat that guy?" And Adarna is like, "Don't talk to dragons that you do not ride." Okay. Adarna, could you be a little friendlier? She was just giving you a compliment, sort of. I don't know if that was a compliment. It was just an observation. You did eat that guy as a snack. Melgren is calling for Xaden and Violet to come to the Vale with him. Not everyone, just Xaden and Violet. And he's right now waiting like at Basgiath main campus, and so they go over to him because Violet is like, "We don't have time to go over to him. A second wave of Venin, or a second wave of wyverns and Venin are coming." And Xaden is like, "Okay, well, this might be the only chance we get to go talk to him, so we should go talk to him now before the second wave of Venin and wyverns arrive here." They go inside, they like check on the wounded, assess what's happening, and Xaden runs over to them and is like, "I figured out the difference." And Xaden is like, "We need 7, not 6." And Violet's like, "That's not possible. There are only 6 different breeds of dragons, so how could we need 1 from every breed of dragon when there are only 6 breeds, you know, and make 7? The math isn't making sense to Violet." She's like, and then they go meet with Melgren while Violet is still like pondering this, and he explains that he wants to essentially abandon Basgiath in favor of defending the Vale, but they will leave like a small contingent of cadets and riders at Basgiath to like act as a distraction. Essentially, they're going to sacrifice a bunch of them. And Violet is like, "You can't do that. Brennan has mended the word stone, and I know how to raise the wards." Like, she's figured out the little sneaky thing that made the difference, like how they would get to 7. She mathed the math, and she figured out what they were missing. Oh, at some point they like found out that Brennan didn't mend the wards. I didn't mention it, but like it did happen. But they don't have time to chat more than that because the second wave of wyverns has arrived, and they've brought the big boss Venin with them, the like general of all the Venin. They don't know it's the general yet, but trust me, it's the general of all the Venin. And Violet is still fighting with her mother about the wards, and she says to her mother, "For once in my life, listen to what I am telling you." And General Sorrengail agrees to let Violet check the wards and see if she can make them work, because if the wards are fixed, like, it immediately solves their like wyvern problem. The Venin would still be able to like exist, but they would be at like limited capacity as well. Like, it would just be like incredibly helpful to have the wards up. And so she's like, "Fine, we could check on the wards." General Sorrengail is also not like eager to leave Basgiath behind. She's like, "Basgiath is like my school. I'm the boss of this place, and I don't want to like totally abandon it." And General Melgren is like kind of unhappy about this, but he's like kind of over, although he's like technically in charge. Xaden is in charge of the troops they brought from Aretia, and this is General Sorrengail's school, and so they overpower them. Well, not like physically. They don't like punch him in the head, but they win. Violet and Xaden have to choose between Aretia's wards or Basgiath because this 7th dragon will only be able to be used at one of their wards, because if you're used at one of the wards, you can't be used in another, because it like pulls from your power, essentially. And Xaden is like, well, we'll probably die if we don't raise the wards here, so we wouldn't even be able to fix the ones in Aretia because we would be busy being dead. So let's go ahead and fix these ones. And he like talks it out with Violet. Like, I think he is like, Violet, you make the final choice. But like, essentially, that's what they come to. Is like, we probably should fix the ones that will prevent us from dying in the current moment. Violet, meanwhile, is shielding against Taryn, and she goes to talk to Kodog, which is, again, General Melgren's big black dragon. Kodog knew the truth about the Wardstone and didn't tell his rider because it was more important to protect dragonkind. And she asked him to help power the Wardstone, because if he doesn't, that's it. Like, there's only 2 black dragons. Taryn is being used in the wards in Aretia, so Kodog will have to be used for the wards here. Taryn is like not happy. He knows that Violet is blocking him out, and Violet explains that she needs to confirm a secret that isn't hers to share. Xaden and her have like another sappy little love moment in which they're like, don't die, I love you with all my heart. And then Xaden is sent to like back into battle, where Violet is staying behind to like deal with the Wordstone situation. And Violet also asks her mother to cut the storms, cut the rain, because it'll allow the Griffins to participate in the fighting, because they're going to need to hold off the Venin and the Wyverns as long as possible to allow Violet and her scheme to work to pull the wards back up. Violet races down to the Wardstone and asks Brennan if it will hold power. And Brennan says, okay, try it. And Violet places her hand on the stone and tries to imbue it with power. And it took weeks for the 3 riders back at Aretia to imbue the Wardstone with enough power to like hold the wards, but she doesn't have weeks, obviously. She has like minutes. And so she's trying to like dump her magic in here. And she's like, we need every rider we can spare to dump magic, but like there's no riders to spare. They're all out there battling. And Violet calls Adarna to come down into the like pit where the Wordstone is with her, and she's talking to Adarna, and Violet says to Adarna, why didn't you tell me? I know I should have known earlier. The second I saw you after Rassan, I knew something was different about the sheen of your scales, but I figured I'd never been around an adolescent before. So what would I know? And Adarna says, different. That's exactly how I have always felt. And Violet says, that's why you feel like you don't fit in with the other adolescents. That's why you were allowed to bond. Gods, you told me yourself, but I thought you were just being... I should have listened when you said that you were the head of your own den. That's why no one could fight your right of benefaction last year. That's why the Imperium allowed a juvenile to bond. Your scales aren't really black. And Adarna says, no, but he is, and I want so badly to be just like him. And I could literally die. Oh my gosh. It does make me tear up, okay? I want so badly to be just like him. Me and Adarna are going to start a Taryn fan club. Okay. She goes on to say, he doesn't know. Only the elders do. They revere him. He's strong and loyal and fierce. And Violet says, you are all of those things too. You know you didn't have to hide. You could have told me. And Adarna says, if you didn't figure it out, you weren't worthy of knowing. I waited 650 years to hatch. Waited until your 18th summer when I heard the elders talking of the weakling daughter of the general, the girl forecasted to be the head of the scribes. And I knew. You would have the mind of the scribes and a heart of a writer. You would be mine. You are as unique as I am, and we want the same things. Violet says, you couldn't have known I would be a writer. Adarna says, and yet here we are. And Violet says, you're not a black dragon or any of the 6 that we know of. You are a 7th breed. And Adarna says, yes. I want you to tell me everything, but our friends are dying. So I need to ask if you are willing to breathe fire for the stone. Mama Sorrengail is downstairs. She immediately clocks that A.A. Rick is down here, which again, I didn't know we were bringing first years, but A.A. Rick is down here, and he's Prince Cam, and he's like, hey, your dad's been looking for you. Good to see ya. And I do think that maybe she should interact with her students more, because if she maybe interacted with the students more than once or twice a year, she may have clocked that the prince was here this whole time. How did she not clock this until now? Anyway, Violet is busy pouring everything she has into the stone, and she knows she's going to burn out. She knows this is going to kill her. And Violet is talking to Taryn and Adarna through her bond, and she says, you both have to live. Promise me you'll choose to live. And Taryn is you need to stop right now. Taryn is ordering her to stop. Absolutely not. Taryn is no. And Mama Sorrengail sees what she's doing, and she's freaking out too. She doesn't want her daughter to die. And Taryn says, you must save yourself. I chose you not as my next rider, but as my last. And if you shall fall, I will follow. He's like, no, that's not how it works. If you die, I die. Sagail dies. Xaden dies. There's no way to avoid that. Luckily, Mama Sorrengail comes over and she drop kicks Violet away from the word stone. She says, no. I think she actually like grabs her shoulder so it like hurts, and then she like literally does kick her away. Slay, we love that. And Brennan immediately like starts mending Violet and being like, what the heck do you think you're doing? And Violet's like really mad. And then General Sorrengail goes over and grabs Sloane and is like, I killed your mom and I made you watch. She's like trying to get Sloane really riled up because she is going to attempt to use Sloane's siphoning signet to pull her magic into the stone like very quickly. And Violet is freaking out because she realizes what her mother is trying to do and knows that it's going to kill her. And she asks both Adarna and Brennan to like stop her mother. And they're both like, the thing is we do like you more than General Sorrengail. So unfortunately, we're not going to stop her. And she can feel pain coming through the bond. She knows Xaden is like dying as well. Like everything is falling apart around her. General Sorrengail is trying to like talk Sloane through the process of killing her and like how it's going to work. And she's like, Sloane, you're not going to need to do anything much. You're just going to need to stand there. And then she turns to Violet and she says, you're everything we dreamed you would be. All three of you. Because Brennan's down there too. And I'll get to see him soon. Live well. But am I sobbing? No, I can talk you through this. This is no chapter 89. I'm stronger than this. On my Throne of Glass girls now. Mira appears shortly after General Sorrengail dies and like sees her mother's body lying there. And then the dragons, including Adarna, like flame the word stones, and it again starts burning and the wards are back up. Violet can hear as the wyvern bodies like drop from the sky outside. She can just hear them thumping to the ground, and both Mira and Violet are just like sobbing, and Brennan is just like looking on with like this like stoic pain. And Violet asks Taryn about Xaden, and Taryn says he will live. And then they leave. They go out to the courtyard, and everyone is celebrating, and everyone is like congratulating them for getting the wards up. Violet is reunited with Dane and Rhiannon, and she's also told that Sawyer and Imogen are fine. And Violet like explains that her mother sacrificed herself for the wards. And she's like, I need to see Taryn and Xaden. Like, I need to put my eyeballs on them. And Taryn, like, gives her directions to where to find them. And then Violet tells Adarna to go talk to Taryn. She's like, you need to tell him what's the haps. And Violet heads straight for where Xaden and Sorrengail are. And Sorrengail talks to her before she reaches Xaden. She says, you fought well today. Which, a compliment from Sorrengail, that's, like, big news. And Violet says, thank you. You did, too. Sorrengail, well, I'm expected to. And then she says, be careful of your words. And then I'm going to read you like a lot of this part. So this is like pretty directly from the book. Xaden is like talking to Violet, and he says to her, I killed him, snapped whatever tether he had on me and killed him. His body fell into the ravine, and now I keep watching the river like it's going to pop back up, even though I know he's miles downstream by now. And Violet like explains what happened and that her mother is dead. And Xaden like apologizes, and Violet's like, well, you didn't like her very much anyway. And Xaden says, I didn't want her dead. I would never want anyone you love dead. And Violet is like, Melgren wants us to come back to Basgiath, all of the cadets and stuff. And then Xaden says, then we come back. Aretia's wards are already weakening, and these are intact. It's safer for you here. This is where we should be. You won't be as scared under the full wards. And Violet is like, scared? I just brought an entire wyvern army, dark wielders, and raised wards, and losing my mother in the process. Please do tell me what could possibly be scarier than that. Xaden says, you love me? Violet says, you know I do. And she says, what's out there that I should be scared of, Xaden? What did he tell you? What did you see? Slowly, Xaden drags his gaze at my body, and it feels like it takes years for him just to look at me. And when he finally does, I gasp, my hand tightening on his and in reflex. No, that single word is all I can think, feel, scream internally as I stare up at the man I am hopelessly in love with. Me, he whispers, a faint, almost indistinguishable red ring emanating from his gold-flecked onyx irises. You should be scared of me. Xaden has turned Venin. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Okay. There's one last chapter that we get from Xaden's perspective. It is like fairly short, and it is happening, I believe, like the night after this battle. They are Xaden is in a nightmare, and we get kind of like a view of the battle from Xaden's perspective as he's battling the Sage, or as we're quickly corrected, a Venin general. And this Venin says to Xaden, turn. It's the only way to save her. You know what will happen when you fail? I'll step over your dead body and find her, and then I'll wrap my hands around her delicate little neck and drain her. And he like comes to, he wakes up, he's laying in bed next to Violet, and he's just like thinking about how sorry he is that she lost her mother. And he thinks to himself, well, I won't mourn the loss of Lilith Sorrengail. I can't stand the pain Violet's suffering, and yet I'm about to become the biggest cause of it. And he goes down to the dungeons to talk to Jack. And he asks him about a cure. And Jack, remember, turned Venin, locked up, Jack Barlow, locked up in the dungeons. Jack says to him, there is no cure. You can never give back what's been taken. You'll only hunger for more, Xaden. I'd rather die than become one of you. Fear flavors the words because I feel it. The power beneath the college, the craving to sate the need for it. And Jack says, and yet you just did. All this time you've been convincing everyone that you are the hero and you'll be the villain, especially in her story. Welcome to the family. We're brothers now. Cressa. So that's where we leave. That's Onyx Storm. Picks up, I assume. I actually don't know where. I haven't started Onyx Storm because it's not out yet as I'm recording this. But like, wow, like Onyx Storm, the big question we need to answer is like, what the heck happened to Xaden? How can he be unvenomed? Can he be a normal boy if he's a Venin, or is he going to turn evil? Is that a necessary condition of being Venin? Is evilness? We'll find out. I'm excited to see. Okay, that's where we will leave these. I'm so excited. This was so fun. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. We'll be doing more recaps later. I think the next big recap that I'll be doing will be A Court of Thorns and Roses. We are going to take a little break, though, from these recap videos. They are like really a lot of work. I love making them. They're so much fun, but they're like really time intensive, and I need a minute to like do some other stuff. I'll still be posting videos. I'll be doing some like reading vlogs and some like wrap-ups and, you know, fun things like that. So I'll still have videos for you guys, but I probably won't start ACOTAR until like March, giving myself the month of February kind of off from these recap videos. Although I say that now, but I might slide some Magnolia Parks in the middle because I do want to continue the Magnolia Park series. So if I do that, sue me. But I would love to have you stick around for those. It will be so fun. I pinky promise. I'm excited. I think I'm going to be vlogging my reading of Onyx Storm. I will eventually do a recap, obviously, for Onyx Storm as well. But my first reading can never be like my recap reading because it's like a very different experience reading and taking notes for a recap than it is like reading. So I will be kind of just like vlogging my first impressions reading. It'll be like a full spoiler reading vlog for Onyx Storm. And excited to be talking with my book besties about it along the way. Okay, thank you so much for watching these. I will see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.